Now. Okay. Well, this is the debate. We don't have a moderator, so we're basically just going to discuss stuff. I guess we're going to start with this is our first government. We have a bare bones constitution, nothing really planned out for how things are going to be run. So that's what our job is as the first government. Whoever gets elected is going to establish uh, how the rest of the game is going to be played. So So if we've removed dual mandate from the Constitution, what do we think about putting it back in through legislation? Yeah, I hate to admit this. I have not read the final version of the Constitution because I dropped out of the convention, and what they did was so different from everything I'd proposed that I need to reread it. Because, yeah, it's my opinion is the convention was a disaster in the end. Even though it got done, got the Constitution, it was nothing like I hoped it would be. Well, actually, we tried to do this. We tried to do what worked in Mk2 and tried to do what worked in Mk3, but avoiding the problems in both. Mk2 was very secretive in that nobody even knew that we were coming back. This was all being done a couple people. Like, can we revive this thing? Mk3 was everyone had their own constitution and everyone was kind of working in the background and then fighting over everything. And I started to see Mk4 starting to descend into that as well. The idea was we get a common ground by starting out with a small group that could organize, just give it some structure, and then bring in people to discuss each different section. Like we did in MK2, we discussed it line by line almost. Oh, thanks a lot. Well, I had a lot of opposition in every step. Mistakes were being made. I would say like okay, this is the timetable we need to do, or suggest stuff, and stuff would be done suddenly. It's like, oh, we needed a little more time on that. There was no way to do it right. Yeah. Well, there wasn't a community. That's all. That's why it was. Okay, we've got a problem in that for some reason the audio is not picking up. So, okay, yeah. Oh, this has been.
Just espresso monologuing.
I got to figure out why. I got to hear some sound so I know what's picking up.
Oh,
Uh,
we have a new guy in the channel who just arrived in Democraciv. Hello, Pooh
Yeah.
Shoes.
hmm. Eh.
Okay, I just need
Anyways, this so
sound
just to
because
blur for a second while you're doing that. Here, but we had what 20. People like in Mark III, it was a clusterfuck. No one was organized, and that problem happened again.
okay.
What we needed is a structure starting before the end of Mark III. We should have said Mark III's ending in a month. Okay,
Okay, can
we're going to
someone
start
on the
getting it.
stream tell me if I fixed the audio problem?
My Senko came in and said, "Yeah, it's working now."
It's working? Okay. I'm
Yeah.
really sorry. It should have been. This was set up to do streams before, and I don't know what happened there. It's because I changed headsets. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Blame the headset.
I do. It changed the output device.
Fat rip.
Okay. So. Great.
I continue on how Mark IV was a complete failure, and we're the ones going to clean it up.
Okay,
Well, what we were basically we were discussing the difference in conventions. Not really kind of important to the election, but kind of giving some backdrop. So I don't think it's that crucial that we miss part of that conversation in the
Yeah.
stream.
all I was trying to say, if you don't mind me cutting you off,
No, it's
just
fine.
to finish my point, we should have started the process as an organized process long before Mark III ended.
That's what we
When
were trying
Mark
to do.
5 comes around, yeah, but it didn't really happen.
Right.
When Mark 5 comes around, we should follow a proper design process, which is a well-known thing. Start it months before so we can get community input. Have a core team who's working on it and trying to represent the entire community and not personal interests, which was something that happened. And then just go with that. Don't say we're going to have people coming in who are arguing that the only reason they want to do things is that they want it that way. Don't have people who are saying, I have no idea what the community wants. Don't have no one participating. And have a clear vision going forward. And that's not something obviously we can do
Well, the problem is
now,
who's
but
gonna make that work? That would be something you would think the moderators, or at least I would think the moderators
Yeah.
set that up. The moderators can't do anything without being scrutinized, criticized, and having an uprising over it. So
Yeah,
is it
there's
the
like-
community going to do it? The community never organizes stuff like that that works out.
I was
Where's
going to
it going
push.
to be done?
That's like, if we're going to transfer to policy before we leave the convention, I personally, I don't know, felt at fault of why the convention was a complete failure. Because by week 2 or week 3, the debates between the relationship between the executive branch and the legislative branch, which hasn't been resolved at all, was pretty much died down and everyone seemed burned out. And I wanted to start the Mk4 right away because I was expecting this done by a weekend or something like that. So I just straight up just started rushing out the Articles 4 through 8, just get it done with, ratify the Constitution, and we'll be ready. Just solve this. Let's start the game. But then,
I agree. There needs to be a lot less downtime. Things need to be, go, go, go.
Yeah, but when you rush it, you're not going to get a good constitution. But again, we weren't.
exactly.
Nobody was on the same page, so.
Espresso, that's why you start it long before the game ends.
We started it during Mk3. We actually did start it much earlier, but we were trying not to. For one thing, we didn't get, organized enough. But we've had the Mk4 setup channel for quite a while. We actually had that because we knew it was going to end, and we wanted to be preemptive. We didn't know it was going to end so suddenly.
Yeah, but you had a channel.
Yeah.
Right.
A channel's not. There's a specific design process that you're supposed to go through when doing things like this.
Right. If we had been doing things ourselves, then just entirely by ourselves, getting all the planning, and excluding, everyone else, that would have been terrible. If we had made it public that we had the makings of an Mk4 set up that early, then people would be rushing into it and wanting to kill off Mk3. There wasn't a right way to do that.
Yeah.
Personally, I think you start the Mk4 situation too late, because at that point, when you start to think about Mk4, Mk3 was about to die. It was obvious, and they just passed a law saying Mk3 is done. Screw this. We're going to Mk4, and in the law itself, there is no apparent plan to fall back on.
I don't remember when we started, but it was February or March is what I think is when we started.
Yeah, let me see the Reddit when the law was passed saying Mk3 is dead.
Whatever it was, that was the day I resigned. And then that pretty much invalidated my resignation, and I, held it off till Mk4 was getting underway.
Alright. Hang on, where is it? Legal end. Right here. Okay, so you start setup in February.
I don't remember the exact date, but it would be in the logs, I think, but I can't access those anymore.
Alright. And the legal end was in May, late April, early May, which I remember I jumped in when you were in the transition between the end of Mk3 and starting up the Mk4 convention. That was when I joined. So, yeah.
Alright. Well, so being said that we need to get back to the election talk.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought the election was supposed to start today.
It was, but they said they're going to do it in the evening. It's supposed to start in like an hour or so.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't quite know what system we're going to use, if they've announced that, or...
They have. It's proportional for legislator.
Okay.
And STB/AB for ministry.
Okay, I've made my feelings about that quite well known, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of sad that I feel that way, because at first I didn't know anything about election systems going in, but I thought this was really awkward, especially when they started talking about putting random numbers into the results as tiebreakers, which with our small community is going to happen. That really bothered me, so I did some research on the system, started trying them out, making mock ballots and looking at the results, and I did not like what I saw. And then seeing it in practice, doing more looking into it, I really do not like that system.
I definitely agreed. I was doing some math myself because I was looking at the ability. I was actually prompted on the coalition talks and whether coalitions influence the ballot. And basically what I found is that if we created about 10 other celestial parties and had them each run a candidate, because of the way that AAV works, we could pretty much guarantee an extra ministry seat for the celestial party.
Yeah.
Which is kind of absurd.
Right.
I mean, I was also saying that no one's going to create 10 parties, but the fact that it can be gamed that...
We have a coalition here
of
several parties. And this is something I warned about during MK2 setup, actually all the way back to MK1, that this is going to be a result of that system.
Well, there's nothing wrong with it, but the fact it's...
Right, but the whole point is people like this because it diminishes the threat of a two-party system, which gets to Duberger's law. But it doesn't hold out. It doesn't actually work out in practice.
Wouldn't you just end up with two spheres of influence with two major parties and a bunch of their puppet parties?
That's what we're already pushing. Honestly,
you get two groups. They don't call themselves parties, but two groups ultimately.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to bash your party, Retro.
Nah, that's fine.
But that's honestly what it's feeling like right now. We had three or four large groups, maybe more. And then suddenly we're getting people saying, "Oh, it's the Unity Coalition versus everyone else."
Oh,
especially in your propaganda.
Yeah.
So I get that it's not, but it feels like there's a push towards that already at this point. That it's either you're with the Unity Coalition or you're with the Liberal Celestial Coalition, which isn't a thing.
No, it's
Because I'm
not.
sure if you ask
Celestial
any,
does not
if you ask,
have a coalition with anyone.
yeah, no, if you ask liberals, we have not. We've been working more closely with Unity until recently than them.
Actually,
And
forgot the part where we agreed, Celestial and Liberals, we agreed to let barbarians take over. You forgot about
yeah,
that.
shit, sorry. Yeah, sorry guys.
Yeah.
We've got a secret, the Illuminati.
Oh yeah, the
decided-
Illuminati. It's out. Me, Charlie, and who else sits in the Illuminati?
The
Me,
actual-
Charlie, Mansteko, Dear Jonas, Holiday, Das, Tiberius.
we're-
We're all part of the Illuminati. We are trying to coup the government and install Das as supreme leader. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Voted for
yeah,
something
okay.
else now.
No, I'm kidding.
Anyways, though, the point is that the coalition, sorry, STV or AV isn't preventing two-party state because of the fact that you can put all your votes towards your own candidates.
It does.
It prevents a two-candidate system, but
Right.
when you can have multiple candidates for the same group,
Right.
then it's the same as having a two-party state.
It also,
There's no I get that.
Go ahead.
It's not an improvement when you consider that people within a party really are like if you vote for one of Celestial's ministry candidates, we only have one, but if you vote for one or you voted for a second, they're still going to generally follow the same ideas because they're representing the party.
Yeah.
This video, I wish I had the link for it, but I've posted it before, that demonstrates how with alternative voting, if you vote for your candidate, you can actually hurt them and prevent them from winning the election by voting for who you want, because the power is in the secondary votes. So you should actually be voting second for the person you really want, unless you've got a clear majority, clear super majority from it.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, if I had to point out a bigger problem, it's that this kind of weirdness happens. That with our voting system right now, it's possible to have weird things that don't make sense to a voter. If you tell a guy, I don't actually vote for the guy you want because it'll hurt them.
Right.
That's weird. That's
Right.
bad.
Yeah.
And even if it were perfect, having that isn't good. On the other hand, I have to say the one benefit to single transferable vote is that it allows for strategic voting. There's the ability to say, vote for me second, and I'll give you this.
Right. But,
Yeah.
I really liked the board account system we were using before. The point-based system.
Where you just give candidates all points and then you just
Right.
add them at the end.
Right. Yeah, we had a point-based system where you got a score based on your votes, so you still got to pick more than one candidate, but the person you picked first got the higher priority, but the person you picked second still had a chance to win because it found a good compromise. It was the person that everyone said, we're okay with this person, even if it's not the person they really wanted.
Yeah.
But the first choice still got priority, and I think it works out pretty well. We did have a problem with an election where some people got upset because their second choice won, and they didn't understand how that was possible. Well, you did vote for that person.
You technically said I'm okay with them. So yeah. Wait, was it how many points you were allowed to give? How many candidates you were allowed to vote for?
You get 3 candidates. And there's a reason for that, but the points are 3 for the first, 2 for the second, 1 for the first, and that also scales up with the number of candidates. If you add an additional candidate, you add an additional set of points to them.
So it was advantageous to vote for every single candidate because the more candidates you vote for, the more points your first choice got. Or
your first choice would get 3 points, but
no matter what.
Yeah, your first
Okay.
choice would always get 3 points. So if you chose not to vote for all 3 people, then you were just waiving those extra points. But you basically got 6 points worth of votes.
All right.
And then there was a scaling system that we never used that would allow for more than 3. what I find is that people just don't like having an excess of choices when they really know who they want going in. It's like they'll have, I want this person, but I guess I'll take this person if I have to. When you do ranked voting systems, you get to the list of candidates where people just don't care. If you get to mandating that you have to fill out this many people, people really don't care, but they're voting to give support for someone they don't like.
Yeah.
So, I really...
Wait, isn't that why we end up with at least like 2 groups or a 2-party state, because people don't like too many choices?
Exactly. That's really the reason why 2-party systems form, is that people just really like simple yes or no, black and white. That's really kind of, it's just a human thing. It just naturally evolves.
And we see the shades of the 2 groups in the primaries instead of the general election. To put it in U.S. terms. So moving on from electoral systems, let's talk about the candidates themselves.
Okay. Who wants to start, and how do we want to just ask questions about the candidate? Do we want each candidate to talk about themselves? Do we want us to talk badly about each other?
I'll personally go with the system where we just tell lies about each other.
Okay.
And blame the artifact. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that.
Getty Speroni has feet that smell like radishes.
That's not wrong.
What? Okay. I don't know, actually. Espresso, you start.
Okay. Okay. Well, so I'll just go down the list alphabetically. Charlie Zulu. Why are you running?
He went AFK. Oh, wait. Sorry. No.
I'm kind of back.
Alright.
So it's honestly this election, there's not a lot that I feel we have to accomplish in game. The celestial tenets espouse science and faith. Obviously, that's the ministry's area. If they choose to build those things, they can. I don't believe we should step on them and say, you have to build these things right away. So I'm not really running on a party platform as much as I am running on the fact that I want to help out with writing all those bills and stuff and writing that code to set up the government. And so I'm hoping that I can contribute to that, because we put off so much from the Constitutional Convention to now. And I want to be involved.
All right. Well, how does the Celestial platform influence those decisions starting out?
I wouldn't say it does, at least for me personally. The platform is one encouraging roleplay and promoting religion and our specific brand of faith. Those are things that aren't relevant to the legislature right now. It's relevant to you in the ministry a great deal. But since I believe that the legislature should be at least in part hands-off, that's not something I can really control. Yeah, there's a few token bills that can be proposed, but I could propose them by a proxy if I wanted to. I'm really just here to help out.
Okay, so you say the legislature is hands-off. Can you kind of go into that a bit more?
I don't want a system where we legislate that the ministry must build these buildings right away in every city.
Well,
if that's the point,
sorry, go ahead.
If that's what we're doing, if we're micromanaging that much, and what's the point of voting for a ministry? You're just voting for people to take the actions decided on by the legislature. Votes should matter equally. The community should have a voice. If they're voting for the ministry, it shouldn't be a meaningless election.
Okay, how does that affect the checks and balances? Isn't the legislature supposed to keep the ministry in check?
I don't believe it doesn't. How do you think it affects them?
Well, this is your part as the,
I'm confused as to the question. I don't understand how.
Well, you're saying that the legislature basically needs to stay out of things that should be the ministry's business. So it's kind of expected that there are checks and balances, that the legislature is supposed to keep a leash on the ministry on the legislature. So do you think you'd be limiting the checks and balances?
I don't think so, because most of them, I'm not saying that the ministry and legislature should completely separate, and that the legislature should never do anything controlling the ministry. I just think it to be higher level stuff. For instance, to use an example, This is a bad example. This isn't exact. I'm just trying to propose something that has two levels. The legislature could say, we're going to pick a social policy tree, and the ministry picks individual policies. And that's an example of how I think the legislature should govern the higher level play in the large strokes, whereas the ministry should control the smaller scale things. If there's no choice in what the ministry can do, then it's pointless. Legislating exactly what buildings have to be constructed means that the ministry has no choice in build orders, which is an important part of the game. So I wouldn't like to see a system where a bill is passed saying, in the city, the first thing you have to build is a shrine and then a paper maker. It should be encouraged, perhaps, but it shouldn't be mandatory.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have questions for Charlie?
Question. What do you believe about large goals like city standards and stuff like that, saying the legislators say, hey, we like these buildings in all cities, but the ministry can still say nope. And what do you believe?
I don't like a system that's reliant on the ministry being forced to veto. If we're putting it down to that, it becomes a fight between whether or not the legislature can achieve a supermajority. I'd rather have a system where we give the ministers some choice without forcing their choice to be exclusively expressed through a veto.
I mean, what choice do they have other than veto? And directly, we're talking with the legislator itself, because technically the Constitution only gives them the power of the veto, and that's it.
Yes, it is. That is true. And that's why...
What do you propose to give the ministry more voice in the legislator and how the legislator acts?
Well, personally, I'd like to set a roughly two-level system. The legislature makes broad strokes of what they want us to do, and the ministry fills in the details, so to speak. So the ministry still has an important role, the legislature has an important role. They each know what they're doing, they're working together, and everything is good. I wouldn't be against a bill which established things that the legislature would like to see in cities. However, I'd be careful about making it too restrictive so that it would either not be suitable to a certain situation or that it would cause the case of the legislature micromanaging things.
So you're fine with like Quilda saying the legislator like to see these buildings in all cities, but not Bill saying we want this now?
I don't think so, because there are cases where you couldn't build every building in every city. There are times when it's not reasonable. There are times you don't build a building in Civ. You don't just build everything you can. So any list would have to be examined on a case-by-case basis. So I wouldn't be okay with making a list that is hard and fast in that sense. It has to have some variation.
Okay, are we done with Charlie?
Wait.
I have a quick question.
Yeah,
for me.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and this is going back to what you had initially talked about your plans to sort of structure government, and that's your sort of priority, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to, just to interject quickly, I'd like to do more, but I don't feel that in the first few weeks of gameplay, there's much that we can really do. We're going to be setting game settings and structuring government, and we'll have a play session or two, in which case nothing relevant to me will happen.
Right.
Go ahead.
My question is, mention in the past has been the issue of how to run legislative sessions. Do you have any sort of ideas for how you think the legislature should run as functionally? Do you think there should be ad hoc sort of meetings where everyone gets online and is in the chat room at the same time? Do you think there should be the subreddit where people are posting bills and having discussions underneath those? Do you have any sort of structure in mind?
I have some ideas, but nothing really concrete right now. Although I've been in government for Democraciv for a long time, years now it seems, this will be my first time actually being a legislature. I'm coming to the dark side. Woo. So I want to do things this way because that's something that I don't have any experience in. I'd prefer to speak to more experienced legislators and then apply my experience to that and work that into a working system.
I'll actually add
Thank
on
you.
to that too. If can I do that?
Yes, it's
Yeah, go for
open
it.
questions to the candidate.
Sick.
We're just kind of gonna go down the list of candidates.
Oh, okay. So I'm not answering this question.
You can, I suppose, but you're gonna have your section
Sure.
down the list.
I just feel like pointing out that a live chat can be difficult with time zones. That's all.
That
Yeah,
certainly
it definitely
is.
can be. I
Yeah.
agree.
That's been a main issue in the past, and that's kind of the reason we switched over to a sort of like 24-hour system on Mark II. I'm just curious to see how.
I also think it's bad for transparency. If everything's done in Discord, it's really hard to get transcripts of that unless the legislature is really willing to put the work into that. But if you're doing your work on a subreddit or you're leaving a paper trail, it's much easier to know what's going on from the outside.
It has its downsides too, though. On the other hand, because I know, and maybe this is just a symptom rather than a cause, but there's always seems to be a decline in participation whenever those sorts of structures are in place, and the legislature, just being in the legislature itself, isn't as on the spot and exciting. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I yield, and we can move on to the next question.
Okay. Is Charlie Zulu done with questions?
If anyone has any other questions, I'd like to hear them. But if not, who's the next legislator?
Okay. Now I saw Bear join the chat during Charlie's thing. Is Bear running?
2 seconds. Can I know this is really rude, and I shouldn't do this, but I have a limited time of which to actually answer questions. So
Okay.
if this is okay with the other candidates, is it possible if I can answer questions now and then?
Actually, that's what I was going to say, is because alphabetically you're on top, I was going to ask
Right.
if you're running right now, what are you running for? And then
Legislator.
legislature. Okay. So, yeah, open questions for Bear.
That's it, right? Not there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Wow.
Is it not?
Espresso.
I am
Wow.
looking, and whenever you're talking, Bear's thing is lighting up. Even though
Well,
I should
that's
know your
definitely
voice,
true.
I've
No,
spoken to you so many times.
I'm done. I'm done. I'm almost as done as when someone said, "Let's go take Edinburgh."
Hey,
And I just
you know what? Go ahead.
Good riddance.
You can do your questions because you're in a rush. That's fine.
No, I'd like to ask if that's okay with the rest of the legislators.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
The
sure.
rest
Yeah.
of the candidates.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Cheers, guys. But no thanks to Espresso, who didn't recognise my voice.
I am really sorry about that. Looking at the list, Bear was lighting up.
So, oh wait, we're asking questions to you?
Yeah.
Please.
Oh, alright, question. Considering on Charlie's thing between the executive versus the legislator, since this is probably going to be the main theme of the first legislative session, what do you think the role of the legislator is in regulating the ministry, or should the ministry have some say in the legislator?
Right. Well, it's quite simple. The way I see it is the ministry play the game, the legislative set up the game to be played. So basically, when people are discussing the idea of making it so that the legislators say you have to build these buildings in these cities, I'm just kind of like, well, that's just silly. What legislative, I believe, can have an influence in before the game starts, for example, is declarations of war. Now, this is something that happened in Mark III, and I believe happened in Mark II as well. I'm not 100% sure. But the legislative would vote whether or not war was to be declared, unless it was an emergency war, i.e. we were declared war on. With that, then the ministry will take that, and at some point during the session, they must declare war on that nation. Therefore, if they don't, it's illegal. They can be sued, etc. One thing we did in Mark 3, which I don't agree with for Mark 4, is despite having a diplomat as part of the ministry, I mean, we had specialized roles. Is that the diplomat could say that you had to wait on the legislative to make peace. I reckon that should be given to the ministry, so that the ministry, they're kind of separate and independent, but they both work together. Because the thing is relying too much on the legislative as a ministry means that the game is going to get slow. It's basically going to turn into 5 people who don't know how to play D&D trying to play D&D for the first time. Every 2 seconds you're going to stop and look at the rules. Every 2 seconds you're going to stop and look at legislative bills, etc. I'm always up for small constitutions and little bills to be built as we go along, and it's the same here. Allow the ministry to play the game. If there's glaring, obvious issues, then the legislative should take the step to sort those issues out with bills, etc. I say there's at the moment, ministry and legislative are fairly balanced. I think making the legislative have power rather not to declare war through a vote in the legislative makes it more proportional, more representative of the whole, electorate, basically.
But why would you say giving peace to the ministry rather than, say, the legislative? When you say it's the exact thing with... Can you use the same argument for declaring war as making peace? It represents that more people want...
You can do that. But the issue is the ministry might decide that, we have, defeated these guys enough. We need to make peace, and therefore it means that the game can carry on, rather than say, you end a say there's law that you have to play no more than 20 turns in a session. Then you get to the point where you're about to capture someone's capital, and 20 turns come up. And in the next game, within 10 turns, you capture 3 turns, you capture the capital, and the enemy come looking for peace. You then have to stop the game, go to the legislative, wait for them to agree on whether or not to make peace, then come back to the game. Whereas what can happen is you can go, right, they're no more threat, we'll make peace. If the legislative don't agree, they can have a meeting, say, no, you must declare war on them again, keep up the war type thing. Unless, there's laws that come in that state otherwise. But I think that's an early thing that we can do to kind of, balance it out.
Wait, this is more of an in-game thing, but wouldn't making peace with someone, then declaring war on them, cause more of a warmonger penalty than, say, continuing a war until it's done? I'm just curious.
I'm eating a biscuit. It will, but that's part of the legislative to decide. There's a lot of initiative that I'm trying to introduce, or would believe there. Rather than just let's rely on everything to be done by the legislative, or let's rely everything to be done on the ministry. There should be set up that both can have power and both can have say. But as I say, let them do it so that there's a bit of initiative and they can kind of take their own step forward and, actually this kind of makes sense.
Okay, Minor Bug on the chat had something to say on that. There's a slight warmonger penalty for declaring war, but not significant. The advantages of making peace, such as gold and resources, often greatly outweigh it.
No, I'm just curious. Because sometimes, I don't know, ministry might go into a war, take 1 or 2 cities, and just peace out when the legislature wanted them to take over the entire civ.
Well, that's
I'm just curious.
To make it clear when they pass a declaration of war, whether or not they want targets. They could just say, just declare war. Whereas what I could do is be declare war, we want these targets. Try and aim for these if possible. Which I know if I was in legislative, I would put that forward. I would suggest, we want to declare war. Say we go up against the Mongols. We want to declare war on the Mongols. We want you to capture this city, and this city.
But wouldn't that be a little bit micromanaging or a caste? So you're suggesting a casus belli system, right?
Not really. It's just a way that it means that the ministry kind of have in themselves an idea of what they need to do and what they feel is going to, A, not upset the ministry, and B, the legislative, and B, just allow them to kind of get on with it. Because let's be honest, say a peaceful party or majority of parties get into the what's the word? The ministry. They're not really going to want to fight wars, but if the law is passed, as you say, they might decide they want to do one city and then, or one city and done. The issue with that is if they do just one city and done, well, the legislative might cause them to declare war again. And as you say, that will lead to warmonger penalties. It's basically what I'm advocating, in case you can't tell, is common sense.
Yeah, I understand that, but playing devil's advocate for a second, would someone argue that just saying, "Oh, we want these cities before you declare peace," wouldn't someone argue that would be too much micromanagement?
Well, they're more suggestions than anything else. But if they're like that, then I'd just tell them to, okay, you be that person who, we're trying to make something for the good of the Civ. But okay, you're fine.
Can I interject quickly?
Sure, go for it.
I think there's something to be said for treating for having a ministry that can make decisions in the moment. For instance, in a war, you might say, we won't declare peace until we've captured these objectives. But at the same time, the ministry is playing in real time. And they can see that they won't achieve it. As an example, they won't achieve it.
This is the point. Yeah, well, this is the point of having it so that the ministry can. This is what I'm trying to say.
There should be an ability to
declare peace. The legislative are, despite not being part of the actual main game, are encouraged and are advised, if they're going to be any good, to actually look at the streams and stuff like that. So they might say, to make it clear for the ministry to give them a hand, these are the targets, but all of a sudden it's an absolute grind of a war, and they're like, look, we can only get one city. We're declaring peace before we lose everything.
Yep,
then
I agree.
Fine. Then the legislative probably would look at it and go, well, okay, yeah, we set out these targets, but it wasn't going our way. Okay, we did okay.
You find that also an argument, though, to sort of slow down the game, like so that the legislative can keep up with the war instead of it all happening all at once?
Well, that's why the legislative can I like them to have the idea of declaring war. But I don't like the game to slow down because I remember from past, Mark 3, sometimes the game can just fucking drag, especially the game sessions, and there is nothing more boring than just looking at Civ while nothing is happening.
Right, but I mean, we have a greater community to serve here, right? We have
but I don't see where the issue is. What do you mean by slowing the game down so the legislative can keep up?
Saying that there's going to be a war, right? That's going to be dragging on, and the potential to lose a lot of resources and a lot of ground is there. That happen over a sort of a longer period of time, whereas if maybe the war had only been 10 turns so far, the legislative would have another chance to take a look at it and go, hey, maybe we should declare peace earlier.
Well, as I said, I don't believe that the legislative should have the power to enforce peace on the ministry. Because, as I say, it leads to the other issue of, by putting that in, you have the issue that, if the war has gone super quick and, the AI is asking for peace or something like that, and you don't give it because you're waiting on the legislative, you hold the game back, and it slows it down. Whereas if you... What?
So...
Well,
it's
the ministers are there to be playing the game, and I think if there's 5 ministers sat in chat playing at the same time, they should be able to keep up with what's going on. I think for me, if the legislative say you declare war, then it's up to the ministers to fight that war out. The legislative should be keeping an eye on the stream, knowing what's going on, making notes and stuff, and then when it comes to them to move on, when it comes to them to have a meeting next week, then they can discuss what they need to discuss.
Minor bug just interjected. I think it makes sense for the legislative to decide on when to declare war and the goals, but the ministry should manage the war and want to peace. Slowing the game down doesn't outweigh the advantages.
I think it's good that we generally have an agreement on that. Not necessarily in this case, that at least between us, we want the ministry and the legislature to work together and neither to have exclusive control.
Yeah.
And I don't. I just also want to say I don't like saying legislature gets this and only this, gets us and only this. I think there should be some flexibility, but it's good that we all seem to think there's a rough boundary.
Yeah. Oh, and also, what do you think of saying, for example, let's say in this hypothetical, the legislature gets the law of peace. What do you think of the letter saying in the war declaration saying, "Hey, we want this, this, and this. You can declare peace, but we have final say." What do you think of that?
I think I've already made my point clear. The legislators shouldn't have you shouldn't force the ministry whether or not to make peace. Whether or not they advise, peace, that's fair enough. That's something different. Advising and forcing peace is two different things. And I think that there was some divide occasionally, I felt, in Mk4 as a person who mainly played on the executive, between the executive powers and the legislative powers, due to that very reason.
Yeah. I was just wondering, because what's your thought on saying, like, passing certain bills, transferring powers between the ministry and the legislator? What do you think about those?
Well, it depends on the power, really. As I said, I've discussed what I plan to do as a legislative. There's not really any limits there on the power of the ministry. You could argue the idea of giving legislative the power to declare war and stuff is part of that. That's the only thing, if any, that I've put down there for limiting, inverted commas, the power of the ministry.
How about going, like, future, or this is like late game and stuff like that? How about World Congress votes? How should that fall into?
Well, I mean, it depends on how it goes. I kind of want to bring back in specific roles within the ministry. So bring back stuff like the priest, the priest, etc., artisan and stuff like that. But depending on the issues such as whether or not it's viable, because last Mark, we didn't get a religion, so the priest was utterly pointless.
Yeah. And also, my brother continues. If there are scares for the ministry to continue war in bad situations, a bill could be passed on situations under which I always try to peace. Sorry. Basically, what he said was, if there's a situation where the legislator wants to declare peace, but the ministry wants to continue the war, the legislator might want to pass a bill saying, no, you must declare peace, or something like that. Or try to peace on these situations or something like that. What do you think of it?
As I've said about 3 times now,
yeah.
I don't agree with that.
Any other questions you want to answer? Anyone?
I don't think we've had enough input on the legs' responsibility when it comes to peace. I'm joking, please.
Okay. Changing the subject, market economy, what do you think of that?
What do you mean?
There's a movement in Democraciv to implement a economy sort of like DU, like the Bowie bucks. You want to introduce that, but like D coins or something like that?
I mean, the Bowie bucks can go get fucked because it's got Bowie's name in it. But I've already suggested, I mean, I was one of the early people who was involved with looking at trying to set up an economy with Democraciv, with Nasenko and Wezgut in a separate server that either I got kicked out of or you destroyed. I don't know which one. But I came up with the idea that I came up with quite a convoluted idea. I don't really want to go into now because it's really long and confusing. And I mean, I can if you want me to, but I don't know if you want.
Yeah, continue.
Basically, the idea was that everybody gets jobs, and there is this idea that there is a stimulated economy. I.e., for example, say you, Retro Spaceman, become a carpenter. Therefore, you just to go with me, okay? It's weird. It's weird. It takes its time.
All right.
You say buy wood from someone who owns a wood tile, right? They sell you the wood for 1 bronze piece. You then build a table with said wood and sell it for 2 bronze pieces. The idea of my system was it was kind of like a mini game at the same time, where what happens is throughout the game, you keep track of like a market, like a couple of people I don't know keep track of a market, and you have basically a quality of life game. So you make money, you build houses, etc., stuff like that. And what it means is the government can take taxes, the government can do stuff like build housing, pay people to be soldiers, stuff like that, and you have this like mini economy bubbling underneath. Then at the end of it, whoever has the best quality of life, i.e. whoever has the most wealth, I mean, that's a really good thing to be suggesting, that wealth equals quality of life.
Yes.
But whoever has the most wealth at the end, i.e. the most houses and stuff like that, they can win a prize. I was suggesting that you make it like a Steam game where people can chip in to pay for it if they want, which I would happily do. Like a £25 Steam voucher or something like that. Which
we do have a Democraciv fund where we can pull money for expenses. There's actually still a little bit in the fund, but don't. It's something that we only dip into.
Yeah, but if you wanted to ask for, this is my suggestion. Like
right.
If people want to get involved, you can ask. Look, if you want to get involved, you don't have to, but there is the option to support.
If we want to pull for prizes, we already have that set up where people can do that.
Yeah, so that was my suggestion. Basically, if people would want that, I need to sit down over like a week and really work out exactly how it works. I've got a basic idea in my head. I was trying to suggest it to Mk4 and Wes. I don't like their idea of I'd said this personally of people can buy tiles and rename tiles and stuff like that. I'm not a massive fan of that.
Yeah,
because it doesn't really do much more than just kind of be a bit, out there. It's like, well, where do they get the money from? You're not really creating it. And for me, what I want the market economy idea to be behind is allow parties to have differences that aren't just playing the game. Because the thing is, what will happen is you'll get so far into this game and there'll only really be 1 or 2 ways to play the game. There won't be like 6 or 7 like there is right at the beginning of the game, which allows for parties to be varied, to be different. And this is what the best bit about it is. If you have an economy system like that, where the government can introduce taxes, they've got to pay bills for building hospitals and stuff like that. Maybe, perhaps we'll see, things I've got to look at and work on and discuss with people. It means that what will happen is you will have disagreements. Someone might say, well, I want to spend more on military, so therefore military will get, an extra 5 gold pieces per turn, a pay. And then people who are in the military, who have jobs as military might go, oh, actually, that seems like that's a good idea to vote for, and things like that, That's my idea, and that's what I want to go through. But as I say, I've got to look at it and work through it, really sit down and make it. It'll be quite a large document. It might be quite boring. It might be quite difficult to get your head around. But as I say, it's an opt-in, opt-out process. You don't have to do it, and you don't have to pay. As I say, like, I'm not trying to slag off Mk4, but as I say, the initial idea from what I was receiving from Mk4 was it was just going to be about tiles and units and stuff. And while I don't mind that being an idea, I would suggest that, say, if you create a unit of spearmen, they can be state control, they can be, that opens up a job as a spearman, stuff like that. That's my suggestion. As I say, it depends on how much people want to opt in and want to opt out, but yeah, there's this option of expanding it, basically. That's what I would want to do with it.
Alright. I'm just curious how the market economy will work, because there was a question asked in the town hall about that. And it's like, yeah, it's fine as long as it complements the game rather than it becomes the game. Because...
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll finish my point. Because I feel like the main point of Democraciv is it's a democratically run game on civilization. And personally, I feel like it should stay that way, but I'm fine with a market economy that complements the game, that gives it more depth, like you were saying. Like, now there's taxes and jobs and stuff like that. You could curtail voters by increasing their pays and stuff like that, or cutting their taxes. Yeah. I like the idea, but one thing I fear is that it's going to consume the game. It's going to become the market is the game, not with Civ on the side. That's what I fear.
I mean, this is the point of it being, as I say, like opt in, opt out. Mm-hmm. It will allow people to kind of make that decision of whether or not they want to be part of it. But as I believe, and as I think most other people may agree here, when you get towards the end of the game, there's only a couple of ways to actually play Civ, and we ended up Mk4 really like about halfway through with only 2 major parties, and that was the DSP and the DVP, DSP for life.
Okay, well, in Mk2, we actually did do a market. There's always a problem that comes up when you're trying to simulate a market, and it has to do with goods. So what exactly is going to be bought and sold? Because if people don't really have an incentive to trade money, the economy is going to fail. So how are you going to address it? What is it people are going to do with the money other than pay taxes?
This was my suggestion. This is why I suggested the idea of having a prize at the end for people and stuff like that. It might mean like people might go, you know what? Actually, I want to get get involved and try and make the money and stuff and try to interact with it, because, as I say, there'll be like, well, a prize at the end of it if they want them.
Wait, but wouldn't that just incentivize people to save up the money, not buy anything? Does crash the economy?
The idea
is ultimately bad for an economy. There has to be exchange of wealth, and to do that, people need an incentive, a direct incentive to spend money.
Well, then that's, say, for example, if I was to be a legislative and we decide to introduce that, if it was clear that people were saving up a load of money and not getting involved with the idea of a market, firstly, I would increase like a standing wealth tax. So if you just had loads of wealth, you'd have to pay so much of it to the government.
But wouldn't that cause your voters to go away from your party because you're basically taking money? You're taxing more taxes on them?
Perhaps, but then
taxes are not always good for an economy if they're not reinvested. And since there's no real wealth here.
Sorry, I'm playing Crash Bandicoot.
No. Sorry. It's fine.
If you're just basically pulling money out and taking it back to the government, we're not reinvesting it in social services or any kind of economic stimulus. That money is just disappearing from the game.
Well, this is why my idea was, you have to say, for example, if you build a hospital, you have to employ someone in that hospital, and certain things like hospitals and stuff like that actually give a benefit to the quality of life of people living in that city. So, say, for example, so playing as China, Beijing has a hospital and a public school. That might give them a benefit of plus, say, 20 to their quality of life, whereas Nanjing might have nothing, and therefore their overall quality of life is a lot lower. So that people, that's the reason why the government should pay taxes, or should spend the taxes and stuff, and why people should vote for them and things, because they'll be like, well, and it's the same for like the ministry, for example. It affects the ministry as well as the legislative, etc.
So, correct me.
Something I need to look at and have a bit of a work with, because, as I say, I haven't quite worked out exactly, but that's the initial ideas. I kind of gave up on it because Masenko and that just kind of would very much like, this seems crap.
I'm just curious. So what you're saying is that if there's like so much, people are just saving it up to see who gets the money first, and you're saying the wealth tax, get the money, and then you're going to reinvest it to public servicemen. what those public servicemen going to use with the money?
Well, this is the idea that this is the point of the idea where, you know, this is where I wanted to look at setting up, you know, a way that incentivizes people to actually buy things such as, you know, a carpenter or, you know, a mason, you know, something like that. Because what I was trying to do is make it that the economy kind of works by itself, whereas there's only a few jobs that actually get any money, so from the government. So being a soldier or, you know, things like public schools, etc. Only jobs like them are controlled by the state. And that was the suggestion I had.
No, just curious. Oh, Bear, if you want to jump in, you could. Wait, do you have a mic, Bear? Or no? Because there's stuff going on in chat right now.
Oh,
I do. I've got to go. I got to head to the police department because my written test is here in a little bit. So.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Yeah, it's all right. Sorry, guys. I'll see you.
All right. See ya. No, it's just that he was suggesting that. Oh, okay. Here's my bugs thing. Add a wealth tax that gives it to members of your voters, and no money is no longer lost, and no voters are no longer lost. But isn't at that point you're buying votes at that point? Like, oh.
Isn't that democracy?
My God.
Well, you know, this is a political simulation, and corruption is part of that. There's no way to prevent it, and it's kind of, you know, it's kind of expected in the simulation. It's not a, it's a bad thing in reality, but here, not quite the same thing.
As I say, you know, it's an early work thing. I think the question was more, the initial question was, how would you support it? I gave my initial thought, and you've delved deeper, which is fair enough, and I'm glad you have. But as I say, it's something that I don't really know if there's interest for. If there was, I would be happy to look at it and work on it and come up with it properly and work with other people to get on it. But I don't, as I say, I think that the initial ideas of Mk4 and Westcott that I knew of was very much like, let's make, what do you call it?
Names. Let's let them buy renames. Like, hey, you own this tile now.
There was some stuff there, but I didn't kind of. I just found that a little bit kind of lackluster. I felt like if you're going to bring in an economy, you know, make it exciting. I know he said not entirely correct. It's me generalizing.
Yeah, but the main problem I see with this economy thing right now is, what are you going to spend the money on other than being corrupt?
Well, the point is you're supposed to spend it on things like, you know, for example, someone who has loads of wealth, but no, like, this is what I'm saying. I need to sit down and work on it. The idea is things like furniture, housing, and stuff gives quality of life points to you. And whoever has the highest quality of life at the end of the game wins. So things such as, you know, tables, chairs, houses, beds, you know, stuff like that, that increases someone's quality of life. So it incentivizes people to go out and buy those things.
Oh, okay.
It's like a game of life. Have you ever played a game of life?
Yeah, I played the game. Oh, okay, now I understand. I thought it was going to be like, hey, how much? Whoever has the most money first,
no.
Whoever has the most money wins the game.
No,
and you get the game for free.
Obviously, the idea is the more money you make, the more you can buy and stuff like that. And the idea is it's trying to set up like a people-run economy. So say someone does own a wood tile and they produce wood. If they want to charge, you know, 12 gold for a bit of wood, but then someone else owns a wood and they want to charge 1 bronze, then people are going to go to the 1 bronze.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the idea. It's supposed to. I think the thing with the economy in Democraciv is we've never really had a solid one, and therefore one of the questions with what's the incentive? Well, there really isn't one because we've played the game without it. I just feel it adds more RP, allows for greater variation within, we haven't had one that I've been in. Sorry, just in case someone jumps in and says otherwise. You know, it allows for greater RP, greater variation within the parties as there's economic stuff that they can do rather than just how do we play the game of Civ? Because, you know, we all have our own, everyone knows how to play a game of Civ the best way. You know, there's only slight variations on that, and as further down the line you get, the less and less those variations come.
Yeah. Oh, and also, before Bear left, he suggested that it'll be too complicated for new members, and that's why he doesn't support the idea of the economy at all. What do you say to that?
I agree. I get that. But the thing is the idea is if there is already this bustling thing that's going on, people can get involved quite easily, understand what's going on. If there's a lot of people getting involved, it kind of depends on how many people are, taking part, rather than just if there's one or two people taking part, then it doesn't make sense. It's the same argument for me as like talking about constitution and stuff.
Yeah.
Is the constitution good enough for new people to make sense of and things like that?
Oh, Espresso, you were gonna say something?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just saw your green light bleed.
No,
And
it's me breathing. I'll try to
Yeah.
stop.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Don't stop breathing. It's healthy for you. All right. What's your thoughts on like private businesses opening up, like say a casino?
I fully support Kevlin's casino.
Okay. Just wondering. Oh, and also you said about the Constitution. What are your thoughts on that? Because I know you were like the first one to hate, like straight up say, no, this Constitution is bad.
I don't think I did say that.
No, it wasn't that. It was back when I was trying to rush the end of the convention because there was too much downtime.
Well, as I said, I don't agree that. I think the Constitution's too big, because the way I believe the Constitution should run was that people make their, get made through bills as the game plays on, allowing newer members to understand what's going on, allowing for things to be easier to change and adapt. So that was my initial thought of it. At the moment, the Constitution's okay. One of the things I want to do in legislative is, shore up the Constitution, just make things clearer, shore up any of the uncertainties that we have. Well, I don't think there's any reason to be, as a certain member of the Blood and Iron Party, who I won't mention, but I think you know exactly who I'm on about. I don't think there's the need to be as aggressive is the word? Maybe, as aggressively anti the Constitution as they are, believing that if something isn't clearly stated, therefore the mods are going to take over complete control and we're going to lose all.
The literalist?
Yeah. But
if it's not it's stated in the Constitution, then therefore it's unconstitutional. No, therefore it's illegal.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case, but what I would like to do is shore it up and, change a couple of things about it, just to make it clear for, as I say, newer players to get involved in, older players to, feel that they're not scamming people, because I know that's a lot of issue for older players. I know last time I was just an absolute asshole and was like, everything's elitist, and everyone's just like, oh, for fuck's sake, stop. But like most people were saying, they didn't like that because they were trying not to be elitist. They're trying to take in everybody. That's the idea. People aren't assholes in Democraciv. It's a surprise, but they're not. So to make it more clear for people, I think is a wise idea. And like I say, that's what I want to do with the Constitution.
Oh, hey, Arch.
Yeah. So I just had a question.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about shoring up the Constitution, how do you make sure that a future legislature doesn't just change it and then?
Well, it's up to them. This is the point.
Really a bad
thing. For me, as I said just now, I would prefer the Constitution to be very limited and allow it to be updated and changed with laws, which means that as parties and stuff move in, you get a change in laws and change in the Constitution as and when it moves. That was the way I would like to have done it. So the idea of shoring it up is just to make it clear in various things. So the idea of how we're going to vote, who's taking the vote, and various other things. Just making the language a little bit easier to understand. That's all I was planning to do with it.
Oh, okay. So you want to write laws that are guidelines to the Constitution?
Yeah.
That
yeah.
Like documentation.
So it's just a change of language, basically, is what I want to do.
Okay. That makes sense.
Nothing else. It's not like let's completely change the Constitution. It's just like let's just change the language of the Constitution. to make it easier for people to understand.
Anything else? Like anything else you want? Oh man. Oh, my book continues. The complexity of the economy is based on its implementation. It could be fine for new people if you don't make it stupid. Oh. He's going to continue on. My question is, with a bare bones constitution, what's stopping the party from saying, hey, let's make it so that we are the only ones in power, and let's just make an amendment saying you need to make it extremely hard to change the constitution? What's stopping them from doing that? From people being assholes? That's my question.
My response to that would be, cool, that's the way that democracy goes. We are playing, we're doing a democratic government sim. If the people have voted in a party that seems like that's what they're going to do and has allowed them to do it, then is it not the fault of the voters who have done that, not the party? If the party can, do that, then that's fine. I've always said I would love to see what Tyrannaciv would be. Tyrannaciv would be, if it was run as a tyranny. I was always interested in seeing how that would work. If we start it off as a democracy, if that suddenly springs out, well then that's the way the government has gone. That's the way democracy has gone.
So, to kind of ask a philosophical question off that, do we as the first legislature have a duty to protect the voting rights of people in the future?
Well, voting rights are pretty much protected anyway in the way that the Constitution is set up at the moment. It's going to take quite a lot for somebody to be able, a particular party.
Let me broaden it. Like, is it the responsibility of the legislature now to protect the rights of future voters?
It's up to them how they see it. They might see it that the people shouldn't have the vote. It's up to them, really. But as I say, while I agree, it's just a case of depending on, at the moment, it's pretty much solid. I think most people will believe that it is the point of a legislative to protect that and to make it democratic. And as I say, it's more of a people's vote thing. If they want to go that way, then let them go that way. But I think most people would avoid that. I think we can all agree. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. To put my spin on it, we're basically deciding how the game's gotta run from this point on. If the legislature gets in, because we're responsible for defining the Constitution, what powers each branch has, and stuff like that. So we're basically cleaning up what the Constitution didn't offer. So that's why I think this is like the most important legislative election we have in the entire game.
I don't think that's necessarily the way to frame it. I believe, and I still believe, that making it so that things can be changed easily in the future is pretty good, because making things be, easily changed and moved around really allows, people later on in the game to have their say, to have new people feel that, I'm not completely blocked out because this is fixed in stone. I hate having stuff fixed in stone and not being able to change, because it just leads to problems further down the line.
Yeah.
I just realized I've had my microphone off.
Amazing.
Yes.
So that explains why people were interrupting me.
Oh, we didn't hear you at all. You didn't go like green light.
Yeah, I have.
I'm sorry, I complain about your breathing. Sorry about that.
Well, I tried to stop, but it didn't last long.
Alright, continue with your point.
I think I've said my point.
Yeah, I mean, espressos.
Oh, I posted it in the chat. I was saying that we have, along with the Constitution, there was guidelines for Democraciv that requires an amendment process, because in Mk4 we had written what sounded good at the time, a process that went by the population, but it went back for 4 elections, so it took a long time for people to drop off, and it actually made the Constitution unamendable when our numbers dropped.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a guideline that basically says that the Constitution has to have a possible amendment process. So a party cannot, they can attempt it, but they cannot make the Constitution unamendable.
But what's your point of saying unamendable? Where you say it's unamendable because only that party specifically can amend the Constitution?
It really kind of is up to the community. It's, if the community feels like we had in Mark II, we had an amendment process. It theoretically could work, but it was impossible with the population we had to do any kind of amendments without an amendment. So we had to use the emergency amendment rule. I would like to not see that ever happen again. So if the community has a reasonable argument to say, well, the amendment process is now too broken to work, then we can work on an alternative system.
So what's your plan on enforcing it? Would the mods be in charge of enforcing it, or would the government itself be in charge of enforcing it, or the community?
In keeping with the way we were trying to do it minimalist, it's not specified for sure. I didn't want to give mods full power over it, but as mods are organizing the background stuff, they would likely weigh in and come up with a solution. But it kind of depends on the situation. I think it's something the community has to be involved in. Any kind of amendment process is based on the community's will to begin with. So there would have to be a solution. It should be simple, just finding a way to remove whatever the blockage is. Like in the case of Mark II, it was the membership requirements scaling back for 4 elections, and we changed it to 2. Didn't completely fix it, but it, resolved the problem.
All right.
Okay. Did it say determined by moderation? I probably did write that. So, yeah.
No, it was what happened in the convention was that Lepid wrote a constitution, and we just changed it up a bit. That was his stuff, not.
Yeah.
And
well, there were
kind of
2
agreed
parts to the Constitution. There was the Constitution, and I wrote the moderation document that became the guidelines. And that's the part that would kick in if somebody tried to shut down the amendment process. There's this one thing, and apparently when I wrote it, I said determined by moderation. There's a problem with that document in that I wrote it, and it was supposed to be debated and picked apart, and that didn't quite happen. So
no, because at that point we kind of rushed the referendum, and we're setting up the game.
The guidelines they're still a rough draft, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Is there any more questions for me? Because I need to start getting ready for work.
All right.
Will
anyone
you forgive
else?
me for forgetting your voice?
No.
Okay.
When Bad comes into power and we take over the government, you're going to be first on the prescriptions list. Sorry.
Conscription for what?
Prescriptions.
Prescription. What? Okay.
You should look up the prescriptions of Rome.
Oh, okay. Okay, I understand. Anyone else has questions?
Yeah, has anyone else got a question? Maybe about me, about Bad, about...
I think that's it, so we can move on to the next person.
Yeah, I have nothing to ask.
Okay.
Oh, Stringlord
is Archwizard running for anything?
Yeah, legislator.
Okay, Archwizard.
Wait.
I'm going alphabetically.
No, but wait, Stringlord in the text chat said he has a question.
There's a question in the chat.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah.
Yes, you may ask.
Do we know how much of a stream delay there is?
No idea. It's
I
probably
mean,
a
we
few
could just-
seconds.
He's in the channel, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in the channel.
Oh, okay. So,
Yes, we can hear.
Yeah, he's just typing it out.
Okay, very important question. Where did you obtain such a beautiful baritone voice, you sexy beast?
That was from Masenko.
I am an actor, and thus, I've done lots of voice training and stuff like that. So yeah, if you guys ever want me to do some voice acting, I'm more than happy to. Narration, I can do that. Yeah, I'm down.
All right, so the question is, amendable is a rough word. What exact amendment process are you talking about when you say that everything needs to be amendable?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, that's
because
for you. Because I think that sounds more like what I was talking about.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The way I see it is making it stuff amendable and not set in stone is probably where he's got it from, because I said that. Just means that, things such as how the voting works and stuff like that, like, I get that that's fine to not be amendable, but other laws, for example, such as, last March, the WPA, the Woodland Protection Act, like, you can't cut down trees and stuff like that. Like, that was just fucking annoying as balls. If that was made unamendable, then we wouldn't be able to cut down trees for the whole game, and stuff like that. So, there's not always stuff, stuff being unamendable is a bit annoying. So I think any new laws introduced, any new bills introduced, making them unamendable would be a negative thing. So the focus should be on making stuff like that.
So would you support a legislative override of any law the legislature makes? Like, for example, Woodland Protection Act has a clause saying that if something becomes unworkable, the legislature with a 3/5 majority or a simple majority vote can override it, saying that no longer applies.
I would just say you have you write a bill where they no longer exist. That law. That's what I would say. I would just make it so that it's easy to get rid of stuff. Making things that aren't changing between laws and bills. Bills change the constitution. Laws are separate things. I don't think you should make too many bills. The only bills I think you should make is to clear up the constitution. Everything else I think should be made as a law.
Alright. I was just wondering that. And also, the Jonas asked Unthread, you could narrate the election results if Charizard can't make it and you have the time to do it / want to do it.
Perhaps. I'd like to check the results first. But yeah, I'm happy to do that. I can do it in a sexy voice. I would do it, I could do it on stream if that's what people wanted to do. All that sort of stuff.
Alright.
Alright, so are we ready to move on to Archwizard?
How do you pronounce Uhtred anyway? It's Uhtred.
Uhtred. Yeah, thank you.
Uhtred.
Thank you. Alright, see you, Uhtred. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Farewell.
Alright, Archwizard, you here?
Yep.
Okay, anyone have questions for Archwizard?
I do, just for the sake of record. Who are you running for? What are you running for? Yeah.
I'm running for the legislature.
Okay, what party are you with?
I'm with United Front, specifically the Unity Party.
Okay. So, do you intend to represent the party's interests, or what you think is best for the game?
See, I intend to represent the interest of my constituents, but if I were to rank it, it'd probably be constituents, game, and then party.
Well, what would you consider a constituent in that we have no citizenship, we have no residency? You represent basically the entire Democraciv community, but you're backed by a party. So what are your constituents?
Well, just the citizens, right?
So
I'll make
you represent everyone, because obviously as legislature you represent everyone, but are you working to everyone's interest or the party's interest?
Everyone's interest. So granted that my views on what's in the best interests will be tailored by the feedback I get and by my views, but in the end it is what the citizens want.
Okay. All right, so this is the first legislature. We're putting the government together, basically. Do you feel there's oversights in the Constitution that you want to fix?
I wouldn't say oversights, but I think it's really important that in the first legislature, we kind of clearly define what the roles of each branch of government is. You know?
Okay, so how would you see the role of legislature versus ministry? Because I was talking to Charlie Zulu about the overlap between them and just, keeping each other in check. How would you see that being done through legislation?
Well, at the risk of sounding like a broken record almost, I think that the goal of the legislature should be to set long-term goals or broader goals for the ministry to fulfill. Right? So, like declaring war and making peace, even though it's kind of controversial.
All right. So, what's a bill that you would try to pass? What is something that you think you would propose as legislator?
In relation to like defining where the boundaries
you get the
are,
job,
or
no, just in general. You get the job,
just
you get
in
a
general?
chance to write a bill because that's what a legislator does. What kind of thing would you like to propose first?
Well, I guess the first thing I'd like to do is just create like procedures in the legislature,
Okay.
like have the feedback of all the other legislatures on what our forum is, and then have processes for proposing bills and amending them, and then followed by making sure all of our cities are in good places. So.
All right. Who else?
I have a question.
Shoot.
So you're fairly new here. Would that be correct? Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
My question is just sort of how has your experience been here so far, and is there anything that you think you would be pushing for, or that's something that we could do as a community to integrate newcomers better, or something along those lines?
Well, I have to say my experience here has been really great, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head that a community we could do better. I mean, I guess the only thing is I just wish it would be a little bit clearer on how to get information.
Which has always been
so
a problem
for instance,
here.
Yeah. So the Democraciv app, it's been a little bit strange to use that. For example,
you'll have to talk to Drew Jonas on that one, but it's still a work in progress.
Yeah. So as an
anything
example, go ahead.
you think we could do to be more transparent about in general? Like eventually, obviously, you've found the information, right? You've made it to the legislative ballot at this point, but is there anything you think we could do to just sort of kickstart newcomers a little better to know what's going on around here better than we already have with the beginner's guide and stuff?
Right. So I haven't read the beginner's guide in a while, but it seemed like it needed update when I read it.
For Mk4.
Right. So that's one of.
I might look at doing that, but usually other people are better at not being so wordy.
Jonas is saying there's a new one.
Oh, cool. I'll have to read that.
And they're doing it by wiki, which is great. That's something I've always pushed for, because we usually have the person that runs the beginner's guide goes inactive, and we can't update it, so we have to make a new one. So I've suggested we do a wiki for that.
I gotta say, Dare Jonas has been amazing as a mod so far.
Yes, yes, he is. He's the best mod.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Great. He's killing it.
Way better than Household Espresso.
Espresso was also a great mod.
He does a great job. I really liked working with him.
Got some questions. Yeah, I'll yield. So,
thank
you.
Got some questions for you. What is your opinion on the United Front? Do you think it can stay as a federation, or will it centralize or decentralize?
So I think we've tried to set. Hey, excuse me. I think we've tried to set it up so it's decentralized, and I think it'll be able to stay that way as long as we recognize, where the United Front, what the job of the United Front is. So that's my opinion there.
All right. So the next is, what are you going to lock from the executive and move to the control of the legislature / referendums?
So I've mentioned this a little bit. I I think one of the important things is the ability to declare war and negotiate peace should be held by the legislature. Also, denouncements. But another thing is that the legislature should be the ones deciding the overall strategy of the game. So I guess social policy trees for the legislature is a good idea.
Right. In a strictly in-game political situation, would you choose to act for your party even if you will face a really large majority against that action?
I would, like I said before, I would represent my citizens. So I would not act for my party. Instead, I would act for what I thought was best for my constituent, especially if I was informed by what they wanted to hear.
Okay, and this one's really important. Pizza with pineapples or not?
So,
This is a make or break the election one.
You see, I don't have any strong opinions about other people doing it, but I personally put everything on my pizza. So, including pineapples and mushrooms and pepperoni and ham and all of that. So, sorry.
All right.
But just in case you were worried, I won't push a law that says pizza must have pineapple.
Okay.
I've got one quick question. So on
Yes?
point 3, you said that you would defer to constituents as opposed to party. So
Yes.
what if a majority of voters said that they wanted a barbarian takeover?
A barbarian takeover?
Barbarian takeover. Let the barbarians take over. I've heard that this is what I'm supporting.
So in general, yeah, I would yield to my constituents, but I also want to yield to the Constitution, and basic stuff. Seems like there's a level, right? There's views, here's what is the right thing to do in many situations, but not all. Constituents and then party.
Sure. That sounds also like you're putting the game above constituents, which, if I recall correctly, you had them the other way around last time you brought that up.
So there's kind of
I think I said that wrong, but game above constituents, yeah.
So in general, it's constituents above game, but for something that's incredibly harmful to the future of the game, then I probably would take game above constituent.
I'm wondering what the distinction is. In what way could you harm the game that wouldn't harm the constituents? Or are you just talking about winning the game?
Well, stuff that would make the game not fun to play in the future is a good one. Is a good a good yardstick there. You know?
Okay.
Is that clear enough for you?
I guess.
Okay, are you done with questions?
I can answer any more questions, but
anything else for Archwizard? No? Okay.
All right.
Okay,
thank you for having me.
Kamichny, are you running? Nope, just listening. Okay. And Der Jonas isn't running. He's probably running from us. Masenko, you're just here to chat, right?
I'm just here to chat.
Yeah. Minor Bug, are you running? Okay, Minor Bug is running. Technically, I'm next on the list, but, whichever. Oh, okay. Didn't realize Der Jonas was running for Ledge. I wasn't sure what the separation with mods was this time around.
So it goes to Minor Bug then?
I'm next on the list, but Minor Bug can go. Minor Bug I don't think is using a mic, so however we want to do this one.
Is Minor Bug listening though?
He's listening.
Yeah, he is listening.
He just isn't using a mic.
Oh, yeah.
So
Okay.
he's
Yep.
gonna have to answer his questions in text.
But we can't ask him in voice. Gotcha.
You can ask him, and he just has to answer in text. Maybe if someone wants to read it out loud, in case anyone's just listening. Okay.
Okay, here are the questions. 1. What's your opinion on the United Front? Oh,
These are
it's
the
the
same question, isn't it? Except for
number 4, of course.
Right. That's a hard one.
That's gonna make or break your party, mate. That's gonna make or break your run. Don't choose the wrong color.
Pineapple.
Thinking of the Monty Python, the bridge.
Uh huh.
Anybody else thinking?
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Yeah.
Though last time I did a Monty Python joke here.
How long ago was that?
I did a Monty Python joke.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the Housia movement?
Oh. Wait, isn't that House's movement?
Nope.
Like. Oh, that was a.
Just named after me.
Yep, it was
Oh,
named
okay.
after House.
Oh, that was a Monty Python joke?
Yeah, from Life of Brian, I was trying to get some role play into stuff, kind of get people more interested in political stuff going on. So I was looking at, the different groups in Judea in Life of Brian. And I thought it'd be funny to have a region of the area be really unstable and fracture into these little tiny groups that were at war with each other, but they all agreed on one thing. They just didn't agree on how to do it, and I thought that would be kind of hilarious and really interesting. So I saw that there was a big debate over renaming the city. A big glass city got renamed Memechester, and I thought, well, this is a really good thing to build into an argument. That would be really funny. And yeah, so I created the Divided Fronts of Housia, and I think I was the People's Front.
Anyway, it looks like we've got an answer to one of the
Yeah,
questions there.
it's coming in slowly. Yeah, 1. I think the United Front can stay together for some time but have some uncertainty on its long-term longevity from the medieval era onwards. It's too early to say, but there are fundamental differences in the warmongering opinions of which could harm it eventually. That was his response for point 1. And as we wait for the response, can you continue on with your one? Wait, isn't the House of Housia part of Bad now, or something like that?
House is, I believe, with Bad. But yeah, he actually wasn't involved in Housia. It was just named after him.
Oh.
Okay, he's with NEO. I guess NEO's back.
At Meyer Law University, how did that transpire into the propaganda wing of Bad?
Okay, Minor Bug is still typing.
Yeah, he is still typing.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving something the listeners to listen to rather than wait for him to type.
Okay, yeah. Well, since I'm next on the list, if you want to do questions for me between his answers or how we want to do that so we don't get dead air.
Yeah, because dead air is like the worst thing to do on a stream.
Yeah, okay. We've got answer number 3 from Minor Bug. It depends on how we will face a large majority against.
Oh.
Okay, and that was the question about would you act for your party even if you face a large majority against that action? So if it's a minor thing, I'm happy to make concessions. So it seems reasonable.
Yeah.
ask a question? Since Miner's the roughly BNI representative here.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone can ask a question. This is pretty much an open debate.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it was clear. So, right now, BNI is campaigning on a rather odd platform of that they are trying to oppose the Celestials and Liberals. They're also campaigning on the fact that they want to be the majority party, or they want to be part of a majority coalition. Given that the Celestials and the Liberals haven't had any indication of wanting to work together, why do you feel that you need to selectively limit our voices by having majority?
Okay. Well, my understanding of that question. Can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
Yeah.
The idea of the coalition was start off as just us, Unity, and BNI, because we both knew we were weaker together. No, weaker separate. So we decided to form a joint list and take it away from there. And we're thinking like how we expand and stuff like that. And we're throwing out different parties we can work with, stuff like that. But then once RB brought in the anarcho-syndicalists, they decided, hey, let's make a grand coalition of a bunch of different parties so we could get our voices heard against the liberal and celestial majority. Because what we thought the election was going to be is like one Unity guy, one BNI guy, and all the rest of the House being celestial and liberals. So that was our main fear. So that's why we formed the United Front, so that there's like an opposition to the main two parties. The third option was advertised as when we first formed it.
See, the problem I have with that is right now you're running the majority. Neither of our parties have enough candidates to be in the majority. You guys are currently the largest voting bloc, larger than us. And right now, you're not saying we want to be a minority among the three and we want to be a plurality. The campaigning from BNI right now is that they want to be the majority, which seems to be at odds with the we're desperately holding on to survival that you're also trying to play at.
Well, I'm just telling you how the logic behind the United Front formed. It was that that's how it started.
I'm wondering about BNI's specific interpretation of it nowadays. Because their attack ads have made things very unclear to me.
Personally, I've talked, I don't know. I have formed a consistent opinion on this because once again, BNI is technically separate from Unity because they're technically separate parties. But for the longest time, we're in a coalition together, so I should probably know why BNI is trying to advertise it as, we're the big guys, we're one majority, we're one the government, stuff like that.
Yeah, they're saying that they want to take control of everything.
Oh, okay. Oh, wait. Mike just answered. He read, I don't necessarily agree with the actions of the United Front as a whole and would have preferred them to remain in good terms with the Celestials. Liberals are opposed to them being fundamentally incompatible with our goals. I can't speak for RB or the rest of the front. You need to ask RB for that. Yeah, it was most of those, we're better than you, and we're going to be a majority and screw you, Celestials and Liberals. That's RB's doing. And the rest of us has been kind of sitting back and letting him do his thing. So you have to ask RB the question of that.
Do you think, as a party, you should be speaking up for how it is run if you feel you disagree with the leadership or the direction it's taking?
Personally, at the beginning, I didn't want to step in because I feared I was going to defend like something crazy or cause a rift between BNI and Unity. Because if that would have happened, my conflicts with RB started way back when the election debacle happened, where he's calling everything unconstitutional, and the moderators were like, "Hey, he disagreed with moderation running the election, stuff like that. I didn't want to step in because I thought he was going to do something crazy like pull out of the coalition, and that would jeopardize the election for both of us. So that's why I didn't jump in. But now, since it's a larger entity than what already is, I don't know, I've been feeling like I should speak up more. I think I even did something in coalition chat where it's like, hey, at this point we're scaring off everyone else, and RB said because they're the largest party and we think we're powerful enough on their own. Oh no, it's like, oh, this is nothing. Don't worry about it. He's like consistently not worried about the Celestials and our relationship with everyone else. So that's kind of scaring me.
All right. Minor Bug also added, I've not had much time recently and see RB's actions as his own. Any more questions for Minor?
Yeah, sorry for taking the spotlight from you, Minor. It's just that I don't know. Oh, okay.
All right, so we've got String Lords typing, and then I'll go next after we finish up with Minor. Okay, yeah, Minor did not answer question 2.
Yeah, you just skipped question 2.
Yeah.
You went straight to...
why are you being evasive? What is it you have to hide?
I think he said he didn't want. I think in the town hall debates he didn't want to answer like any of the questions or something like that. So I don't know. It's his decision, not mine. Oh, to continue on the tangent with RB, like, okay, here. To be honest, it's a minor question since everyone had practically said the same stuff, but it's still important to hear. That's what String Lord said. It's just like the current PR fiasco we're currently having right now can entirely be blamed on RB and his aggressive campaigning, but I don't know. Like, he seems he's the perfect politician. He has a spine and sticks to his opinion until he's proven wrong. And even if he's proven wrong, he keeps fighting. So I like that in him, but still, that can get him in like dumb stuff. Like that election debacle.
Can I just interject for a moment?
Oh yeah, sure.
Honestly, a perfect politician should be really open to working with other people. That's just my opinion there. So
yeah, I mean, like for a campaigner, the Donald Trump guy, like walking around being a spine, having a spine, saying you're wrong even though he's wrong. That's how you win a campaign. If you want to be a politician, that's the complete opposite.
Wow. Well, yeah. Let me interject. It's not the great traits for a statesman, right?
Yeah.
Maybe for a campaigner, but not for a statesman.
Yeah.
String is trying to get RB into the chat. Are we done with Minor?
Wait, Minor, are you okay with ending your questions, or?
Okay, so the answer is, generally I prefer for the executive to have as much power as possible. I don't want the game to get dragged out to being too slow.
Yeah, RB might be coming in a minute. I don't know.
Okay.
Alright.
Yeah.
That's it?
Alright, so anyone can ask me anything, and I'll try to give the most amusing, possibly honest answer that I can.
RB just popped in, so if we want to go back to that previous conversation a bit.
Do we? Oh. Alright,
in the chat and not say
I have a question for you, Espresso.
Okay.
So you're running for ministry. Your job will be Supreme Court appointments. So I guess my question for you is, I'm going to look for in a Supreme Court justice, and how do you think that ties into that is well functioning within the context of Democraciv?
Well, to risk sounding like I'm playing favorites or nepotism here, I've been in this community so long. I know a lot of the people that I consider trustworthy, that I think can handle job, and I will be considering that. If you've got a history of skirting the law or being chaotic, I don't really want you in that position. I've seen so much good and bad come out of the court. I don't know how important it's going to be in Mark IV. I think its role is diminished quite a bit, but I want someone good for the position. I don't have any candidates in mind yet, but I also want to consult with the Celestial Party to see, since I'm representing them, how they feel about candidates.
Okay, thank you.
Can you give us examples of what example of what people would you appoint to the Supreme Court, or what people you would reject?
I don't want to give specific examples yet, mostly because it'd be off the top of my head, and my memory's not always. But again, I don't want to be specific, but I'll look at people that have fought a lot. It kind of depends on what they're fighting for. People that have been really active when they're around and know the game really well, like people who've held a position for a long time in either executive or legislative branch. There's some people that I know are just too temperamental that I would not feel good about appointing. I would basically do it very similar to how I looked at moderators to appoint.
And would you play party favorites for looking at options to other parties?
I would play party favorites because, that's part of being in a party. I have to look out for our interests. And so, I would really want a Celestial on the court.
And one more question. How do you feel the game has progressed since you've been here since Mark 1?
Oh, it has been a lot of up and downs. Mark 1 was a disaster, but it was such a great idea. Mark 2, for all the problems it had, I thought it was magnificent. I thought it was amazing. I saw so much success where people saw conflict and problems. I just had a different perspective on it all. And, for Mark 3, I couldn't stay involved. I couldn't really do much, but I just saw how everything just kind of went. It just got to where it stopped being interesting. It was just, let's go, let's get it done. Just, it's taking forever, but everyone knows their jobs. They show up. It's like when you're at a job for a long time and you stop caring, so you go in, kind of work mindlessly for 8 hours, clock out, and then try to forget about the workday, come back 8 hours. That's sort of how Mk3 really started to feel. It was very bland, and there wasn't much interest. It was just, there.
And what do you hope to achieve in Mark 4?
Well, I've had up and downs with my hopes for Mark 4. I left my position because I don't feel things are going to be the way I was comfortable with in being a moderator for Mark 4, because I kind of get a sense things are going to get weird. But I really am hopeful. I've seen a resurgence in the community and more interest picking back up in the game now. And that's really the key to it. It doesn't matter how we're organized or whatnot. It's if the community is good, if the community is willing to stick it out, we can make stuff work. So I'm optimistic. I do kind of get this feeling there's stuff that really reminds me more of Mk2 than 3 lately. For one thing, this debate, there's really an interest in making the thing interactive and interesting again, instead of just the same couple people doing the same thing and just
Can I ask a question again?
No, you can't, so go ahead.
Okay. So it's gonna be okay. Yeah, I remember what I was gonna ask. How are you going to, as a minister, maybe not you. Maybe there's someone else who could do this. But how are you going to translate the game in a way that the community can follow appropriately and the community can feel engaged with? You have as a minister to do that?
Well, it kind of depends. Do you mean during the stream or outside the stream? During the stream, we do need to kind of well narrate our actions and what our motivations are. I've done Civ 5 streams before where I've tried to indicate why I was doing various things. But between the sessions, we do need to be able to explain why we did what we did. But that's the main thing, is we're there to play the game, and for the people to be involved, they need to feel they have influence, so we need to demonstrate where that influence is coming in, or they're just going to think we're playing, why bother showing up?
Any more questions?
Yeah. So, first of all, I have to ask, how do you like your coffee?
Oh, well, it depends on how it's made. I prefer coffee from a press I actually do cream and sugar. If I'm going to go for, I will drink an espresso straight when I need to. I've actually been cutting back on caffeine and trying to do better with my stomach, so I'm actually cutting back on coffee, but if I am going to do something more like the Starbucks end, I'll go for a hazelnut latte.
Yeah. Second of all, where do you think, the lines between the ministry and the legislative branch should be drawn? Like, what power should the legislator have and what power should the ministry have?
Well, I do think that everything that needs to be done by the ministry is to keep the game flowing. And if you have a group like the legislature that is severely limiting the ability to run the session by restricting actions and limiting actions, I think we have a problem, and it will start pausing streams, cutting streams short, prolong the game in a negative way. However, there does need to be a check and balance system. As I'm running for minister, personally, I hope they leave me alone and let me do whatever I want. But, I think that we do need to figure out the checks and balance. We are the first government. We do need to establish how that's going to work, because the Constitution was not very clear on some of this stuff. I've got some questions from String. My opinion on the United Front. Okay. I feel, I've discussed this a while ago, that the United Front is really one large party. Even though it's different parties with different ideologies and such, the fact that they've united and are going to be pooling their votes makes them into a single body for voting purposes and for political purposes. And so that kind of makes me concerned about their impact on the electoral systems. Do I think it can stay as a federation or centralized, decentralized? Well, the trend in Democraciv is we start out with some interesting parties that collapse and merge really fast. We've already had 1 or 2 mergers before we even started. So I think it's very possible that as the game progresses, this is going to merge into a single party. So what are you going to lock from the executive and move to control of the legislature or referendums? I do think wonders are something that need to be taken very carefully. Of course, war declarations. I really think the ministry needs the ability to respond quickly to things. I'm thinking about how, here in the U.S., we have not actually formally declared war in ages. Instead, we just do military actions that are not technically war, because war declarations have to go through this process and have to go through Congress. but the president can authorize military strikes if they're not part of a war. So I'm wondering how we could be inspired by that to allow military action by the ministry without declaration of war, or perhaps we could allow wars with city-states without declaration. This is really something where, after we see what legislation proposes, it can work out the details. Policy trees, I think we should have policies planned out in advance with our goals as both a civilization and as political parties. So to that end, I would not be opposed to letting legislature argue with that, argue for that. So when it comes to things about that have preparation behind them, things that you can plan in advance, I think legislature should have some say in that, if not most say. So a lot of it, we just have to see how it plays out.
Can I jump in for a second?
Sorry?
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
Like, to add on to that question. Yeah. What do you think specifically the science technologies, because that's somewhat reliant on where we start and the situation of the game?
Well, my party is very interested in knowledge, and even though we have a religious theme, I kind of considered whether we should pursue religion first or science first, and I feel science is our religion, that our religion is more philosophical. I feel writing is the top priority more than anything. This is something I find when I play in higher difficulties, is rushing to get science really fast can make or break a game. And so that's where I want to focus, is getting writing. And usually when I play like this, I want to get writing, then I want to get currency, so we get the economy stabilized. So that's how I usually play, and that's what I'm going to aim for.
So, I mean, like, who will have control of choosing the technologies, the ministry or the legislator?
I would say this is a legislative thing, except that it would take too long and too much of a process. This is something that needs to be decided very quickly when it comes up, but there does need to be involvement in legislature in part of it, but I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out. The ministry needs to be able to pick, and also needs to be able to choose in order to adapt to whatever happens during the game session.
How about, like, the legislature sets a goal? How would you feel about that, where the legislature says you need to have writing by X number of turns?
Kind of was discussing something similar with regards of building things, like saying I think that was Charlie, where we dictate you must have a paper maker in every city. It's not that different to say, well, we have to have gunpowder at some point. We're going to get all the technologies at some point, so that's really meaningless unless they're actually dictating the technology path for us, then, or they're setting a deadline on it, which is kind of dangerous. Then, well, I mean, you could just working.
So is it just like a request from the legislature that says, "Hey, ministry, we'd like you to prioritize writing"? Is that something you'd support?
I think the legislature could work around it. Could legislate things about science or wanting, I don't know. But I do think the legislature can be creative without dictating specifically the technology, can dictate the end result that they want, and then leave it to the ministers and the executive to make that happen and figure out the best way to comply with legislature's ideas. This is something a legislature is going to have to be creative with.
Okay, I have one more question.
Okay.
So who should really deal with faith and religion? Is that a job for the ministry? Is that a job for the legislature or something else?
Under a branch, that we should actually set up a religious group, basically a secretary of religion, a high priest for the civilization, to manage faith. But some things like naming the religion could be done through legislature. We could certainly do that where all the beliefs and everything are picked in advance by legislature. I do kind of think, especially if you're trying to get an early game religion, you really need to look at what's optimal for your situation, what kind of map you have, what the layout is, who your neighbors are, what resources are there, so on and so on, before you decide on a religion. If we have legislature do that, they will not be making the best decision based on our current situation.
Thank you.
Okay. Who else?
Stepping in a little bit. This is going to the RP roles in a little bit.
Okay.
Do you believe the government should declare itself a secular state and let the religious matters be settled by a separate church? Or do you believe the government should be involved in religious matters?
Well, as we feel that knowledge and religion are one, we also feel government is part of that model as well, and it is simply a way to lead you towards enlightenment. So I do believe that we should have structure in finding the religion, that we can all be united on the same page, although we certainly do welcome dissenting views and other ideas, because that is where knowledge truly comes from, is through debate and discussion. However, I do think we should have a government-based religion.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? That's it.
All right, let's move on to Peppergetti.
All right.
Okay, so what are you running for, and what party are you with?
Okay, so I'm running for I'm running for the
L
leg.
place.
What was that?
The L place.
Yes, exactly. I'm running with the Liberal Party.
Okay. So, what exactly is the Liberal Party? Because we know, like in real life, say like in America, what liberal means, and it kind of means different things in other places. But from what I understand, means something different in Democraciv entirely. So, exactly what is the distinction?
Sure. So we have an emphasis on freedom ideology and the liberty social policies. And we're really focusing on, for example, free market is one thing that we want to focus on with trade routes. So ensuring that we have global trade, which from what I understand in America is not considered a more liberal thing.
What you're discussing in America is conservatism. And liberal is like considered the polar opposite of that. So that's interesting.
But we're going to focus on a cultural or a diplomatic victory. But that's not going to be a first term thing, obviously. Right. We do want to maintain friendly relationships with other civilizations who are adopting similar policies of liberty and freedom. But we are planning on being hostile towards non-free societies. We do want to build up a large military to defend ourselves and to intervene in other countries that are not as free. But we're not going to be declaring war on other free democracies. Yeah.
All right. Okay. As legislator, what is the first thing you're going to try to pass? What do you think would be the first kind of bill that you would write or support?
So, I mean, one of the things is this is my first time in Democraciv, right. So I'm expecting, well, if I get elected, if I understand the system right, I'm number 2 on the Liberal ballot, which means if I'm elected, that means there's going to be another Liberal, right?
Right. You would be second on the list, but of course all legislators are equal except for the speaker.
Right, but I will be in the legislature with another more experienced Liberal.
Right.
So I would probably want to get their advice on that, but things that I'm thinking of are I mean, one thing that I personally think is strange is that the Constitution is so easy to amend. My opinion is that it should be brought up to a supermajority, like 2/3. I believe it's now at 50%,
Is it
right?
really at 50%? Because
Yeah,
thought it
you
was.
just need a majority vote on a referendum to amend the Constitution. It was made on purpose, so it'll be
I would have
easily
opposed
amendable.
that if I'd have noticed it.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, there was a proposal to change that to 2/3 majority,
Yeah,
but that failed.
There's a
So
reason
that didn't change.
an amendment should be difficult but plausible. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
out of reach, but it really
2/3
needs to. It's like, do you really mean this? You have to really mean it before you start cutting up the Constitution and sticking stuff in there and doing surgery on
Right.
it.
And another thing that I was thinking of is, I mean, everybody's been suggesting this, but I think everybody has so far, requiring declaration of war from the legislature in order for war. And another thing that the Liberal Party generally supports that I can get behind is the legislature makes minimum requirements for peace deals. So they don't micromanage the peace deal, but we say from the get-go, this is what we want at a minimum out of the peace deal. So we don't. Do you see what I'm saying? We're not micromanaging that, but we are giving a minimum
That's an
guideline.
interesting variation on it.
And it also leaves room for the court to come into play, which I like too.
Right. And that does kind of get into where I'm saying the ministry needs to have the ability to respond to the situation instead of having certain things dictated in advance. So
I do have a question here.
I have an answer.
So do you have, so when you say like requirements for the peace deal, does that only mean things that the other civ is going to give us in negotiations, or like goals for the entire conflict? Like before you declare peace, you must take this, this, and this.
So I'm not sure what the Liberal Party as a whole is maintaining on that, but from my understanding, it would be the latter. So, for example, if we're declaring war to take out a certain city, that would be part of that, perhaps. Although I'm not sure that I might be the only person thinking that, so that might not.
Well,
come to fruition.
if you were to write a bill that did this, is that what you would put in there, or something else?
That would be what I would put in there. Again, but because I'm inexperienced, I would be looking for other opinions on that. So,
thank you.
You're very welcome.
Right.
Anybody
We've got
else?
some questions from Stringlord.
Oh, there we go.
And these are the same questions that have been asked to everyone else, except for what is your opinion on the United Front? Do you think it can stay as a federation, or will it centralize, decentralize?
Yeah, so, I mean, my understanding is they have some pretty radically different views, so I can understand it in the short term. I don't think it's going to hold together long term. As for my opinion on it, I think they're very combative. Some people more than others. But,
all right. What are you going to lock from the executive and move to the control of the legislature / referendums?
So I already talked about war with that respect. Another thing that we were talking about in the party that I like is religious pantheons and beliefs going to the community to decide. So that's not the government dictating religion. That's sort of religious freedom, I guess you could say. Kind of.
Right.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay. In a strictly in-game political situation, would you choose to act for your party even if you will face a really large majority against that action?
Yeah, I would say so. What I think is the right decision doesn't change based on what other people think. Other people will elect their own legislators that share their opinions, and if a majority disagrees with me, then a majority disagrees with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And what is your favorite ice cream taste?
My favorite ice cream taste, pretty generic, but I really like chocolate.
Well, that's the right answer. Well, the proper answer should have been Rocky Road, but that is acceptable.
What?
All right.
I don't know if I can vote for any of you now.
Like,
All right. Anyone else for Peppergetti?
I have one.
All right.
What's your stance on? You probably already said this, but would you push a war that's being pushed by other parties, but your party doesn't stand for? So mixing like up some of your statements in question 3, I believe.
Yeah, I'm gonna double down on that answer. If other people are in favor of the war, then other people can elect representatives who push for the war. I, if we're talking about declaring war unnecessarily on free democracies, and other people want to support that, they're free to, but I'm not.
Alright. Thank you.
All right.
You're all.
Um,
And Charlie's got a question there.
okay.
Do I like pepperoni on my pizza? Do I like pineapple? I of course like pepperoni on my pizza. I do not like pineapple. So there's that. How can democracy truly be free if they're
Okay,
not
because
under
Shirley
our
said that,
ban?
that's now the official celestial position.
All right.
Wonderful.
Okay, do we want to let RB
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yes, that's
because,
probably the
you know,
best
we
idea
brought
right
him
now.
in, he's probably wondering why we dragged him in here.
Yeah, like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, so, all right, so yeah, let you do that.
RB, you have the floor.
Hi, I'm the United Front candidate of the Blood and Iron Party. I support war. I dislike those who doesn't work together with us. And yeah, that's it. More war.
Alright, any questions? Like, any at all?
Okay.
Vote for me.
How do you intend to work with other parties? Like,
Negotiations.
negotiate? Like, how would that work?
You support some of mine and I support some of yours.
Okay, so kind of a quid pro quo there. All right. Now, do you feel actively hostile towards the other parties?
As in roleplay or meta?
Let's just role play. This is just about politics. It's not really about anything personal.
I think they're a threat, as they're the largest parties, and it's better to have a coalition of smaller parties instead, having the power instead of just two major parties. That's pretty much it.
Okay, String has some questions for you. They're the same questions. What is your opinion on the United Front? Do you think it can stay as a federation, or will it centralize, decentralize?
If I'm gonna be honest, I don't think it's gonna last for too many more elections, as both Unity and us are pro-war parties, and the IFP are basically the most pacifist party we got. So, but except on war questions, and if we put that into the future and focus on what we can agree on, I think it can last for quite a while.
All right. What are you going to lock from the executive and move to control of legislature/referendums?
War and peace declarations, and basically that. I also think the legislative should have the ability to vote on everything, and that the executive in turn can veto it, which can be overturned by another override and so on. But I think the legislature should have the power to affect.
Okay, you got quiet there for a second. You still there?
You didn't hear me?
Yeah, you just cut off suddenly, but I think you finished your sentence.
Yeah, you finished your sentence.
Okay. In a strictly in-game political situation, would you choose to act for your party even if you will face a really large majority against that action?
Since we are a one-issue party that advocates war and pretty much nothing else, if I can't advocate for war, then there is really no party left.
Okay. All right, and question number 4. I cannot read out loud for some reason. I'm having trouble seeing it.
France was a mod abuse. Now even question here. Please read this espresso. There you go. That was question 4.
Okay. Anyone else got something to ask, Arby?
Yeah. Wait. Archie, you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to clarify your point about the legislature and the ministry. So basically what you're saying is that the legislature can try and legislate whatever it wants, but that the ministry should always feel free to veto it if they don't want that to be regulated.
Yeah, my suggestion for that is in the Parliament Foundation Act,
Okay.
in which the legislature can order the executive to do anything with a majority vote, which the executive can veto with the 3/5 of the ministers, which in turn can be overridden by the legislative with 65%.
Thank you.
I've asked several legislature candidates this question. Apparently, you're already on it about what the first bill they would either write or support. It sounds like you've already got a bill written. Is that right?
Yeah, I've already sent it to most major parties.
Okay, so do you feel there's going to be a lot of support for this bill, or how viable do you think it is?
I think it contains a lot of specifics that we disagree on. For example, term length, exact veto requirements, and mostly specifics on how elections should be run and so on. But I think it's good as a base to negotiate further on.
Okay. Stringlord has asked you to describe the bill, or better to post a link to it in the Discord.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a link on it. I think he posted it in our coalition chat. Let me find it.
Right.
Found it.
Okay, Charlie has signed off. Okay. Yeah, we've been at this for quite a while, but we've only got a couple names left.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Alright, okay. There.
Yeah, we
found
probably
it.
should moderate this better next time.
Most likely, yeah, but you weren't expecting this many people, weren't you?
I was kind of hoping we'd have someone that could moderate it, keep time limits, figure out the questions to ask. This is very informal because it was, last minute notice.
I do have to say, though, that it is pretty fun, so.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Oh, you cut out there a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm not complaining about anything.
Okay. Well, what are you doing in politics? Okay.
Oh, me?
Yeah, I was joking.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, RB, do you want to explain your bill a bit, or do you just want to let it speak for itself?
Well, it consists of several parts. It's not complete, more things may be added. But the first thing it does, it decreases the default number of seats in the legislative to 10 from 5, which was a suggestion from the Unity Party. And more clarifications on how exactly a majority and how bills are passed into laws. And then 4 kinds of motions, a recommendation, a non-binding recommendation for the executive for what the legislature wants it to do, a legislative order, which is binding, but this is the one that can be overridden, and then two kinds of referendums, which the parliament can call for, which the public will vote on, all citizens. More specifics, and finally, subsection 2 is the election system I proposed last week or whenever it was.
Okay. Well, it sounds like more than one party has worked on this bill. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're already doing multi-partisan activities here. So, is that something we can expect for future legislation from your party?
I fully intend to cooperate with other parties on bills if we can get a working system. Yes.
All right. Any more questions for RB?
I've been waiting to ask this question, but do you fear that the propaganda we've been putting out recently is scaring away the other parties into not working with members of the United Front?
I mean, it's possible that it can, but I think once we are elected and the propaganda campaigns calms down, we can move past that and still negotiate, as we will need to get bills.
All right, thank you.
All right. So Retro Spaceman, you're up.
Yeah. Hey, hi, I'm Retro, founder of Unity, and one of the founding members and parties of the United Front. I'm running for legislator. I'm in the top billing for the combined list for the aggressive part of the party. Oh, hey, Minor. Anyone want to answer some questions? Ask some questions, sorry.
Yeah, I've already answered enough questions. Don't look at me.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Alright. Oh.
Well, if no one else has anything to say, I would like to hear about, for the benefit of everyone else, what are your views on, the powers reserved to the ministry and executive?
Personally, my views of the ministry and the executive is like this. Legislator and executive. There you go. Alright. Legislative, they make broad decisions on the general gameplay. Like, for example, they could set up systems where they want this and this, but they can't, specifically micromanage the ministry because that's no fun. And slows down the game for everyone. And the ministry should be in charge of all in-game actions. Like, for example, I believe, technology should be researched by the ministry because that's dependent on your situation. For example, if there's a gold mine in where we place our first city, there's an incentive to go mining first so we can harvest the gold mines as soon as possible. However, I do believe stuff like social policy trees should be decided by the legislature because that's more planned out as the game progresses.
Okay. Were you involved in this first bill that's been proposed, and do you support what it says?
Yes. Originally, I was going to make my own version of said bill called the Constitutional Act, but what has happened is that we decided to merge all my ideas and RB's ideas into 4 separate bills. And what we're looking at now is his version of one of those bills that we want passed, which is basically our ideas of defining what the role between the legislative and the ministry does in game. Second bill is basically going to be defining legislative procedure, which is the Parliamentary Foundation Act, which is what we shared now. I believe the third bill is going to be how referendums we're going to handle referendums, but I think that's sort of handled by the Parliamentary Foundation Act, sort of, like amendments to the Constitution, stuff like that. And the fourth bill is going to be setting up the Constitutional Task Force, which basically is responsible for handling the Constitution and planning out Mark 5 in case Mark 4 collapses, like Mark 3 did.
All right. Stringlord has the same string of questions for you.
All right.
Okay. What is your opinion on the United Front? Do you think it can stay as a federation, or will it centralize, decentralize?
Right now, it's pretty much decentralized to the point as we're a bunch of party alliances. Like, if you look at the separate parties, us and B are a federalized system of parties because we're sharing a legislative list and we have a candidate that we're supporting. But if you look at our relationship to, say, the anarcho-syndicalist or especially the IFP, it's more of a decentralized alliance because IFP has their own legislative list and their own candidate. They're just helping us out with. We have like common ground, especially early game on. What I predict for the future, hopefully we could withstand past the medieval ages, but I don't see that happening. What I see most likely to happen is our bonds between BNI and Unity come closer together. IFP drops out around Middle Ages because we want to be more expansionist through war, and they don't because they're a pacifist party. I could easily see them dropping out of the United Front, and the anarcho-syndicalists just staying there as sort of like a satellite party, but their own thing. That's why I see what's going to happen to the United Front.
Okay. What are you going to lock from the executive and move to control of the legislature?
Executive. Power to declare war, obviously, because you don't want a ministry running around declaring war on everyone else getting screwed over. I originally planned to give the power piece to the legislature too, because my understanding is that the ministry might end a war too early, or the legislature wants to get some stuff that the ministry didn't want to. So that was my plan for giving them the idea of peace. And also, I want to lock the ministry from stuff like World Congress votes and social policy trees, because that's more long-term affects the long-term strategy of the game. So I was planning to give that to the legislature because that requires more thoughts and action. More thought than action. Because what I view the ministry as is action more than thought, because they're in the in-game situation. They're in-game, they run the game itself, so they need to make quick actions to make sure our civilization doesn't collapse when 20 turns or so. Well, the legislative job is guide the ministry with the grand strategy, but not micromanage them.
Okay, well, it sounds like a lot of your ideas are very mechanic-based. So is that where your focus is lying, is on winning the game, or are you focused on the political experience and role play?
Well, the idea of when I first founded the Unity Party, it was sort of be like this nationalistic / mechanical based party where we're going to be the party of reason, and the nationalist side was going to be the RP side, sort of like how RP is being aggressive, all that stuff, saying the liberals are going to build a military, while the mechanical side of the utilitarian side of the party was going to manage the game and stuff like that. That was my view. Like, I'm open to RP, it's just that since I'm sort of new to this game entirely, to demo games entirely, I'm more mechanical focused than RP focused.
Okay. Is it in a strictly in-game political situation, would you choose to act for your party even if you will face a really large majority against that action?
If I believe the party is right, then I say yes.
Okay. NASA or SpaceX?
That's actually a hard question. I mean, NASA, you got the moon, or you got Elon Musk.
Just remember, NASA builds everything based on the lowest bidder, and they had things like Challenger.
Yeah. Yeah. You have Apollo 1, where the crew burned to death alive. But you also got the moon landing out of that. So
you don't believe that they faked the moon landing?
No.
Okay.
No. Why you think? Okay. Right now, I have to side at SpaceX at the moment because they shot a car into space, but I'm on the fence on that. I'm sorry. Elongated muskrat for life, yes or no? Yes.
All right, so is that all for retro? Okay.
They didn't fake the moon landing, but they faked the rocket takeoff.
All right, yeah, it seems like people are getting a little restless here. I don't see any pitchforks yet.
right.
Stringlord running for office? Or just asking questions? Okay, Stringlord is running for office. What are you running for? Who are you running for? Legislative, number 3. Celestials. I should know the people in my own party. You know?
Yes, you should. You probably should. Alright.
Okay, so questions for Stringlord. You know, Stringlord, someone's been posting the same 4 questions over and over. You should probably answer those.
To answer before. Oh.
Okay, well, you're the last one, I think.
There is Barzozek.
Okay, he must have just joined.
Yeah.
Barzozek, are you in voice and running for office? Okay, so, well...
MJ was here, but he dropped out.
Yeah.
I think he told me he got nervous or something like that, so...
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, I don't think we can really have 30 minutes of dead air here.
Yeah, no.
So, so what do we want to do for Stringlord? Okay, some time to type. Okay. Right, and then after that we can wrap this up because this has been a very long broadcast.
We started
1 o'clock.
2 hours and a half.
Yeah, I really thought this would be done in like an hour.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of... I only thought like maybe 3 or 4 people were going to show up, so this has actually been great.
Yeah.
Okay, so the questions are same questions, which I guess we'll read the question followed by answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
I like number 4. Number 4 is clever.
It is. I could have a nice long rant on that. All right.
Thank you.
What is your opinion on the United Front? Do you think it can stay as a federation, or will it be centralized, decentralized? And the answer is, I just heard members of the United Front saying they will collapse in a few cycles. I can't see it will survive too long.
Or maybe that's what you want. We want you to think. No, I'm kidding. Like, honestly, we have common early game goals. It's just most likely the conflicts with military expansionism, stuff like that. It is a make or break deal for the coalition. But I do see some centralization happening for that the final breakup happens.
Honestly, though, I think that as long as we bear in mind what the coalition is meant to do, and that we figure out how to agree to disagree, it could probably last for a long time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just that there's like some conflicts, like especially expansionism, that might make or break the coalition if we're not careful.
Yes, we have to be careful.
Yeah. Wait a minute, I just realized no PU candidates are here in the debate.
Well, that's too bad for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we only announced this at the last minute.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised at the turnout because of how short notice this was.
Yeah, no, I did an announcement in the coalition chat for anyone who was interested.
Yeah, I did get some people upset yesterday because they thought that this had been planned out and no details were being shared. It's like,
oh my god.
Yeah, because it's like, why don't we know anything about what's going on here? I'm like, we just decided this 15 minutes ago.
Yes, we did. I mean, it's actually inspired by the interview in the Layman's Digest the Celestials gave out to Minus. That's how the idea sprung up. Like, maybe we should do something ourselves.
Yeah, we used to do this stuff every election. Usually the press would host it. That's our YouTube channel was originally called DNN, the Democraciv News Network, where we do stuff like this. But
Yeah,
all that's fallen to the wayside during Mk3.
and it's picking back up in Mk4.
Oh,
Maybe we have better luck this time.
All right, so what are you going to lock from the executive and move to control of the legislature? Referendums. String says, outside of the basics, war, don't delete units, etc., I will support a system for selecting technologies because they are easy to regulate and they are a large part of the game. I will also support a referendum to select religious bonuses because they are also incredibly important for the game.
Oh, I'm just curious. What do you think of the amount of like newspapers coming out of like you have the Layman's Digest, and then you have a bunch of party newspapers that are support of their party. What do you think of that? I'm directing to Espresso, but anyone else who wants to answer, you can jump in.
Because I was reading stuff while you said that, so I didn't catch the whole question.
Sorry. What do you think of parties having their own newspapers to compete with the Layman's Digest?
Oh, that's great. That is just great. The more press we have, the better. Again, a big problem we have here is a lack of information, and having newspapers is a great way for people to know what's going on and also to see what the differences in the parties are. It's great for people coming in, and it's great for party members, and it's just, as far as roleplay goes, it really enriches the experience. I think it's wonderful if parties are doing their own papers.
I have to say that the newspapers have been invaluable for me as a new person. So.
Alright.
Okay. Question 3. In a strictly in-game political situation, would you choose to act for your party even if you'll face a really large majority against that action? Of course I will support my own party. I will go even further and say that going with the majority activity hurts the game. It makes people less interested in factionalism and long-term kills the game. Okay. Someone's asking about when voting ends. I'm not involved in the vote, so I don't know. Traditionally, we do 48 hours longer if there's a problem with notifications, but I don't know how things are being run this time around.
I think they're holding on to Sunday or Monday. They want to do over the weekend.
Yeah, I always advocated for an extra 24 hours after the polls close to look for errors and irregularities, because we've had elections where they rushed the results before things were checked out and we had to do recounts. So
that would have been hell.
If we take an extra day, go over, make sure the ballots are validated and there's no errors in counting, then that's not as likely to happen. Stringlord says some of you don't support giving analogies from other demo games. I think lessons learned are lessons learned. So I know some of you do not support giving analogies from other demo games, but I think that in this case it's important to give one. DU went with how the majority holds and did just what is best in-game for more than a year, and we can clearly see the differences between DU and DCiv in activity and the such.
I mean, DCiv seems active, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, we had a real drop in membership during the end of Mk3, just a really sharp decline, but we really do have a very lively, active community that the people that stick around really mean to stick around, but we don't have a lot of the same problems that seem to happen to the other demo games. And I'm sure there's a number of reasons for that.
Like, D-Hoy is like one of the worst examples of a demo game going horribly wrong.
Yeah. Well, part of it, people really disagree because it's my thing as moderator, was we organized so much stuff in the background to make sure that the problems that ended up happening in the other games, we anticipated them and prevented them from happening. But, some people really might disagree with that point.
But I don't know. Something happened with D-Horde seemed like similar happened to Mark III, where it just no one wanted to do anything. So
Yeah.
they just had a vote to end Mark V and go into Mark VI or something like that.
Okay, elaborating on these problems and how I solved them. Okay, that's gotta remember some of this stuff. I remember one of the demo games had a problem with with an elected head moderator, and they started electing someone who was head moderator who went inactive and locked the game, so nobody could play anymore. There was no structure set up for how to anticipate somebody not being there to run the game. So we've always tried to look at what happens. We did have a problem early on when our head moderator disappeared for like 2 weeks, and we had enough anticipation and structure to work through it to make sure that did not kill Democraciv. We do anticipate things like voter fraud. We anticipate various forms of cheating. We try and resolve conflicts in the community before the community turns toxic. It's a lot of small stuff, but we try to maintain as much as we can to keep the community engaged, and that's really where a lot of it is community management. If the community is good, they can work through the problems in the game, and that's where a lot of our focus is. Now, I say that after I've retired, but
Yes. Wait, what motivated you to retire? Just out of curiosity.
the Mk4 convention.
Oh, how I basically rushed the end of it?
Well,
Because that was around the time you retired.
stuff happened going back even to Mark II, but Mark III was a terrible experience for me, and I was miserable. And then, as much as I just got detached from it, I've got other interests now that are occupying my time that I started to care less and less about Democraciv. And then came the Politiciv experiment, which it'll take me too long to talk about, but I began to see a flaw in my thinking about how I was organizing things, and it made me decide I need to rethink how I'm organizing stuff because I'm doing something wrong here. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was under your own volition.
Right, I resigned.
Alright.
But part of it is because I can no longer effectively help the community as a moderator. I can pretty much do nothing in that position. And so I'm not enjoying it. I got to where I wasn't even enjoying Democraciv. I was getting really detached from the community. I was just wanting to leave the whole thing. And so leaving moderation was my way of resolving that.
Alright. So how are you enjoying yourself as a citizen of Democraciv?
There are things that really upset me. And, this is just a game. I shouldn't be upset. But there is a particular party, I won't say who they are, bad, that really just does stuff that hurts. That after everything that Democraciv has been through and everything I've done for Democraciv, seeing this, a lot of stuff feels like a slap in the face. But, it's because it's little stuff that new members would not even notice. But there's that, and it's just the whole concept of the party is to tear down the game and basically sabotage us. That's not something I'm cool with. I've spent too much effort trying to make sure that this game does not fall apart. And that's exactly what they want.
So you fundamentally disagree with them?
I personally disagree with them. In a meta sense, as far as the game politics, I would be okay with them existing. As far as personally going, I, I just, I'm really bothered by them, and but a lot of that is personal feelings that go back a long time. That again, new members have no knowledge of.
Sort of like the hijacking of Mara Law University and stuff like that. You're kind of mad about that?
I'm very mad about that. Meyer Law University was started by Dometer at pretty much right after launch, and it was just such a great idea. We had this huge, complex constitution, and he had this idea to start a university to teach classes on it, and it was great. He invited the drafters to come in, and we all taught lessons on individual articles, where we could really go into why we wrote it the way it was, and we could kind of even point out the loopholes and even our own mistakes. We would point them out. It was great. Some of the people that have been in this chat were also instructors there. It was such a great thing. And then something happened. Dometer was doing so much good stuff for Democraciv. I think he set up the wiki. He set up an alliance for independence. He really did a lot of work for independent candidates. Really helped build up Democraciv, and then one day he decided to tear it all down.
Hmm.
Yeah, he cracked. He got into the Supreme Court, started making cases that were really weird, started basically actively going against the Constitution and trying to start a conflict between the mods and the court that wasn't there. He was trying to build this rift. And really it all started when he came up with the idea of a defeatist party. He thought that it would be interesting to create a party that was intended to prevent the game from winning.
Which ended up being bad.
Right, well, the party never actually formed, and bad is an attempt at that defeatist party, except I don't believe they're trying to make us lose the Civ game. I think they want Democraciv damaged. Everything they're doing is against the political game in Democraciv. It's not against the in-game stuff. They haven't gotten to that yet, but they are looking to sabotage our politics. And the really messed up part is that the people behind bad, the people running it, were also the authors of the Constitution. Which means they're the ones that know exactly what loopholes they intentionally put in there.
They know what loopholes there are.
They knew this from the beginning. Feels like it's an ulterior motive that they took over the convention specifically to sabotage it. And that is like, wow. If it wasn't the same people, I would just roll my eyes, but this
considered a meme party.
This is a party that they act like they're a disenfranchised group, but they wrote the Constitution. The two founding members pretty much dominated the convention and drowned out any other voice.
Well, Dominator's opinions, he did try to make it more formal, ? But no one wanted to listen to him.
Well, that's because of his history.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because he actually dropped out in Mk4 intentionally. He wasn't kicked out. He volunteered to just leave. So I was really surprised when he showed up suddenly and wanted to start taking over the convention again. And it just seems weird. But, maybe I'm just kind of having a paranoid mindset about this, but it does seem like this was a concerted effort to disrupt Democraciv by intentionally removing the safeguards and the influence that moderation had and any kind of constitutional protections against sabotage. That was, it makes me worried that that's going to be the end of Mk4 right as it begins. That bad is really, literally bad, that it could actually destroy Democraciv. I do fear that.
I'm. Stringler asks, if I may ask, what's the entire bad thing? I read their manifesto does seem to go directly against democracy's institutions. What's your response to that?
Well, they are directly against everything that it's done in a way that's it's typical Dometer. It sounds very clever. Like he's announced this new training program for the ministry. The idea is that he wants to have newcomers be able to participate in the ministry. That sounds great, right? But what he really wants to do is take office, then immediately back away and exploit the proxy system so that anyone he wants can act as minister for whatever time. So basically, whoever the people elect is not who takes office, it's whoever he feels like should be there. So if he wants to put someone disruptive or someone who's, who doesn't know what they're doing, whatever he wants, he can do at that point. And he would not be accountable as a minister for doing that because he wouldn't be doing it. It would be the proxy. And so that's a way of dismantling the ministry right off the bat. But it sounds so exciting and so nice to read it.
Would you consider that maybe a challenge to the current proxy system?
I do not believe that he does things specifically to correct them. I don't think he's that kind of person. I wish I did because, I've dealt with his stuff for so long and tried to understand his motivations. I don't think that's what he does.
And this is just from my perspective on it, his motives. It definitely does shine a light on an issue. And I think as a community, it's our responsibility to address that. And if there's anything good that does come from bad, the ability for them to, for the rest of us, and figure out all the holes in our institutions and try to patch them up best we can.
Well,
maintaining liberties.
That would be a good outcome. I'm not sure that's what they intend, but it can also it's also very risky because we may not, as a community, be prepared for such things. I have seen online communities be destroyed by similar activities, and I don't know if we're really equipped for that.
Well, I think that we, to a degree, we can't do everything, but I think we have enough experience here, some of us.
Right.
I think we have a lot of new voices
I think they are targeting new members that don't know the history with bad, and like bringing back MLU with these lessons that sound on the surface like really good legal lessons, but are actually about how to ignore the Constitution or ignore various laws. They're about finding loopholes. I read the lessons. I don't remember them. I just remember reading the first one, and it was like, it was heartbreaking because MLU was something great starting out. Asking about the nuclear option. People were so against any kind of nuclear option. That's kind of the point of the guidelines, is if the game goes off the rails, we can say, hold up, we've got a structure with moderation here. We can restart the game, or we could handle things some way. And that was opposed so much because there's a belief that anything moderation does is overstepping their bounds. We literally got called the janitors.
Yeah, I saw that live because I was trapped in that constitution. And when I said, in the original constitution, there is no right to a fair trial at all. And when I said, hey, let's do right to a fair trial, he says, look at right 3. It says all rights not specifically in the Constitution is given to the citizens. And he said, therefore, the right to a fair trial is not necessary. That's what LePig told me. And you're feeding into the cancer of the community. That's what you directly told me.
Uh-huh. And remember, LePig is one of the founders of BAD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also suggested a moderation backdoor in case like something stupid happens where the entire Democraciv community collapses. That moderation steps in and says, "No, this is too stupid. We're starting Mark 5 now."
You would think that makes sense, and again, I'm biased as a moderator, but
Yeah.
the stuff I did as a moderator was not meant to have a bias, but more, about making the game function. Never really even intended to be a moderator, but
Right.
I kind of got drafted repeatedly.
Oh. Reaches high self-destruction because so we have no nuclear option in case like Bat takes over and rips everything apart.
Exactly. There is actually a loophole for that. A little oversight that can still be done.
The guidelines.
The guidelines. They had no control over what's in the guidelines.
They want to control over the guidelines.
Yeah, and the guidelines can be modified without their consent.
No, because our original intention, if you look at LePig's original draft, the guidelines was Article 0.
Right.
And thankfully, the one smart decision out of the Constitutional Convention was repealing the guidelines and forgetting about the guidelines till the very end, till it was too late.
Well, the guidelines were always going to be controversial. There's a reason that stuff needs pulled out of the Constitution, but part of it was I really thought we needed something that can carry on between Mark 4 and Mark 5 so that we don't have to lose everything and go into this chaotic period and have this weird transition of power, like not even knowing what the moderation team is at that point. But we could have a structure saying, well, after the game ends, we have this, this, and this. These are the people that are responsible for making sure this happens. And also, if the game falls apart and can't be played, well, yeah, we can also do this, this, and this, and have it all in just one place. And that's kind of what I hoped would be the use of the guidelines aside from the rules and an introduction to the game.
So what do you think of setting up like a constitutional task force where in the event that Bat takes over and destroys Mark 4 and we have to call it off and start Mark 5, they can just step in and have some legitimacy instead of people complaining, oh, mods are taking over.
And what are the chances that a member of BAD or such, or perhaps one of their alts, joins that task force?
Well, the idea was that they'll be screened first, and we point stuff that we trust.
Convention that it was supposed to be a wave of people brought in. People were going to be brought in waves based on how they were contributing to it, so that we didn't have chaos in there. Instead, I would not have approved Dometer to go in there knowing what I know of him. So how he got into that planning was not in my control. If that sounds petty, it's experience based. Because I wish things were different between me and Dometer.
Question: would I have been a constitutional drafter had your system been in place?
Would I have, or would Dometer have?
No, would I have?
Would you have? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was going to be in waves. I figured we were going to put 5 people at a time. But instead of just having a whole bunch of different voices, we would just, everyone who comes in would start chipping off the stuff they didn't like, but we would be able to discuss it with ideas of what it actually is, how it all fit together. That was my hope, and that didn't happen. Instead, we just opened the floodgates altogether.
Opened the floodgates?
Yeah. Let everybody who wanted the drafter role have the drafter role. But I also knew that it was going to be controversial to limit people's access to those that showed an early interest.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you had been really contributing ideas from the beginning and really wanted to, you probably would have been one of the ones picked.
I mean, I joined right after Mk4 collapsed, and I remember that, hey, can I be part of the drafting? And said, sure, here you go. Here's a role.
Yeah, that's not how it was supposed to work, but Yeah. But then again, that's why you're still here, because you got to be
Yeah.
part of that. So it's not all bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no oversight on that convention, and we let two particular voices take over.
I mean, to be fair, I wanted to draft my own constitution, but then by the time the convention started, it was too late.
Well, that
Yeah.
was what we were trying to discourage, because in Mark III, we had 3 or 4 different constitutions written, at least. I know I had one, Dive had one, Solus had one, LePig, I think, had one. Then,
Was this similar to the one you drafted for Mark IV?
no. I
Oh.
didn't draft the Mark IV. LePig wrote the Constitution for Mark IV.
Yeah, no, Pig's drafts.
I don't remember. But LePig was an entirely different person back then. I don't know what's happened to him. He's gone off the deep end. He's had some kind of head injury or something. I don't know. So, I don't know what to tell you.
Alright. My Senko's like, Mark III is
Oh,
my
okay.
constitution.
Oh, it was you!
You caused the death of democracy. Shame.
Masenko was really involved in early MK3. We really relied on him. He did a lot of great work. He pretty much single-handedly ran the citizenship system.
Oh.
So, yeah, he really was a big part there. So, yeah.
So, leading now that there's bad, which is basically trying to rip up the system. What are your opinions of the other parties?
The issue I have with Blood and Iron is I kind of am wary of Nazi parties forming. And if I see something that starts to remind me a bit too much of... we've had Nazi parties try to form in the game, and that's one area where moderation would actually step into a party and say, no. We actually had a Nazi party form for about 10 minutes before every moderator turned out to be on at the same time, and we all said no at once. So yeah, that concerns me a bit if we get parties that try and get too close to that. Right now I'm okay with Blood and Iron for what they are. If it starts getting into Nazism, that's something else.
Are you saying authoritarianism in general, or the specific ideology of Nazi?
No, specifically Nazism. I mean,
oh,
we're role play. We, pretty much everyone here at least has some knowledge or interest in history to some degree.
Yeah.
And, part of that is World War II. Part of that is, the conflict with the Axis and with Nazi Germany. So there is always going to be some interest there in the role Nazis played in politics and history. So, I understand that. That's why I don't worry too much about stuff, but seeing an actual Nazi party or seeing neo-Nazi stuff start to build here is, that's a hard no. We don't go there. We don't want that in this community. And that's more of a community decision than a political one. That's a hard line where moderation steps in. Even if I don't care if people say that's undemocratic or it breaks their free speech, that's a no.
Oh, and Meyerberg asked in the chat, what's the point where we consider a party turning to the Nazis?
What's the point?
What's the point? What's the line between
they start
a
calling
regular...
themselves a Nazi party. That's obvious. That's the obvious one. They start using Nazi symbology. They start chanting Nazi slogans, or they start using hate speech in general in the chat room, where you start seeing overt signs of neo-Nazi activity coming from the party. That's kind of the thing where it's really a community enforcement thing rather than a party enforcement. I do not want to see neo-Nazis take hold in Democraciv. Because of that historic background we have, because, I was saying that, we are going to have references to Nazi Germany as we're historic and political based, but that's also something that a neo-Nazi group would use as a front to start recruitment or start other things, and it's also something trolls would latch on to. It's just not something we need to have here at all, and we've got a great community as it is. We don't need that kind of presence here.
So you're saying once the party becomes cancer, then you're gonna break it up for Nazis?
No, absolutely not. I said specifically they have to be doing Nazi things.
Oh, okay.
Nazi
So you're
symbology,
okay-
the name of Nazis, shouting Nazi slogans, even stuff that, because neo-Nazis can be very subtle, but if it's getting to the point that it's recruiting Nazis in our game or promoting the Nazi ideology, then that's different from having a fascist party or an authoritarian party.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
That's what I was wondering. Were you drawing the line where there's like more authoritarian
no,
parties?
That's
or
fine.
Fascist
If
parties?
whatever your ideology in game is, or whatever, even having. It actually was in the rules that you could have a conflict with an in-game civilization. You could actually discriminate against Siam. Like, we specifically made an exclusion to the to the hate speech for Siam, because if it's an in-game thing, then that's roleplay. But if you're going in and start talking about an ethnicity, that's not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if a party starts saying, they want to turn on the ovens. No. Turn on those showers and fire the ovens. Then that's when you start breaking them up.
And something like that, you may not hear that. It's like, why are they talking about showers? Why are they? But if that's the kind of stuff they're saying, it's like Nazi code speech. It's like, we got to keep an eye here. We got to know what's going on with this. That would be an instance. But if it's just some authoritarian party, then that's part of the game. It's particularly the Nazi ideology that is the problem.
All right. So, any other strong opinions on other parties other than BNI?
Anyway, I'm not saying BNI is a Nazi party. I just,
you just
my radar started looking and reading the party, and I was like, I should wonder about this. So it's something that got my attention. So if the party's not going to go that direction, it's fine. If it is, then actually we had a Nazi technocracy party try to form, and I talked to the guy. I really wouldn't like a Nazi party at all, but I told him the platform wasn't bad, but he wanted it to be a Nazi party. I said, just don't call it Nazis. Just get the Nazi stuff out of it. A technocracy party with an authoritarian bent is fine, but just not Nazis.
So that's why I'm guessing the technocracy party came in?
Yeah, and they didn't take off. Because that tends to happen when people know you're a Nazi. But let's see. The other parties, you should all vote Celestial. I really haven't followed closely on all their platforms. I liked the Liberal Party. I was actually going to go with them before I joined the Celestials, because I thought there was some good roleplay potential with that. So I don't really oppose any of the parties. I just will probably disagree with them. Everything I do as far as political and in-game stuff is going to be roleplay. I'm playing a character. I'm Cafe Long in-game. I can be Espresso for the outside stuff, but Cafe Long is the person running for office.
Alright.
Can I say my opinion about ninjaism and the pirate parties of the past? I didn't care. I had to stay out of politics in the past, so my limit to party exposure was pretty much making sure they were on the ballots.
And I'm probably going to repeat this. What's you said your opinion on the United Front, and why you think we're going to coalesce instead of fall apart?
Well, I think the individual parties are going to decay, and that there will be a consolidation of the different parties into something new. I think the United Front, existing as it is, gives something for people to rally together for. And the ideological differences are going to start to melt down as interest in the party start to wane, and this weird two-party system starts to try to form. I think if it's not the United Front, it'll be something similar. We'll begin to consume other parties. So that's my expectation.
And do you see if, say, let's keep using the United Front, for example, because that's the big elephant in the room right now. Let's say we somehow magically find our differences, sort them out, and we form a giant party. Do you think there would be? What would you think the response would be?
I think when that happens will also be around the time that we get a lot of people losing interest in the game. So I don't think there's going to be that big a response.
Like, let's say, for example, it happens early enough where people are still interested in the game, but not later, but still happens. What do you think your response would be? Like, right now we declare ourselves a single party.
Yeah.
What will happen?
Well, you lose the right to argue that you're a group trying to gather together to get votes against the major parties.
Yeah.
So you lose that whole argument right off the bat. Also, since we're using an alternative vote system, you're putting your votes in danger. So there's going to be some representation changes with that. People are not going to be happy when we get a consolidated group of parties. It is going to take the illusion of choice away. So that's kind of a big thing. To be honest, a lot of this game is all about perception and about what people are seeing and thinking about all this and that, because that's what politics is. It really comes down to a form of advertising, and so that's kind of what concerns me, is as we begin to get fewer choices and fewer interesting things, people are going to lose interest. If people are still interested and that happens, there will be a drop-off. It won't be immediate, but there will be a drop-off in members due to the lack of party interaction.
Yeah.
We can mid-game hump of declining participation. Do you have any sort of ideas for why that happens?
For why we have declining participation? I got a lot of ideas, because I talk to people that quit, and I do surveys usually towards the end of the game to find out why people left. The community is a part of it. Part of it is, a big part is a lack of information. But political fighting gets to be a big thing. We take it too far. The problem is it stops getting to where it's in-game stuff and it gets really personal. And once that happens, we do drive people out. So that's
sort of like
big
the
thing.
Bowie situation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. With those
like,
two.
As example, we consider the Bowie situation going too far.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something where.
What's the Bowie situation?
We didn't quite know
I'm
how far
not
can
aware.
we go on that. How much do we allow? And the minute you silence someone, you're violating their free speech, and you've got a riot on your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I don't know
how do you resolve that appropriately? So we use the muting tool quite a bit, and that itself was enough to get people upset. That we have to defuse this stuff before it explodes. My general thing that I do is if I see people getting escalated, or I just pull them aside on private message and I talk them through it instead of making a big scene. I just I just try and defuse the situation that way, because usually people are upset for a reason, and they need to get that resolved, but they don't need to explode in the chat, and they don't want to stick around. Nobody who sees that wants to stick around. And as a moderator, it's difficult to deal with. So dealing with it privately, quietly, is the best thing to come about, and it does a great job. It's part of why we have a good community here. So Kamichny says fatigue, and that's definitely a thing. But I think fatigue comes down to a lack of interesting activities. There's not much engagement to the game. Part of the point of the election broadcasts and the community streams is they gave people something to look forward to and something to interact with. If you don't get some kind of immediate response or some kind of interaction with an activity, if all you're doing is hitting a form and hoping for the best you're going to hope for is a compulsive behavior from them. You're not going to get much that wants you to stay. It's going to be boring. It's going to start to become a chore rather than a leisure activity. And at that point, why stick around? Why enjoy that? So
that's why I want to introduce an economic system, just because platform.
If people can interact with this not just on vote once a month or once every 2 weeks or whatever our schedule is, vote so on, and then and when you start getting into that, you stop caring about who the candidates are, and you just pick the most familiar names, so we get a few people consolidating power because they're the most familiar, experienced people. New players just see this group that have pretty much got a lock on things and don't know how to do stuff. When everyone knows the routine and it all goes by rote, we don't start relying on beginner guides anymore. We don't start relying on sharing information. We don't have a press anymore because we all know what's going on. And we're not going to get new people that way because they're going to see, well, they all know what they're doing. We can't fit in here. We can't squeeze ourselves in, and it's rare to get someone that works their way into the community at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm losing my voice apparently because this has been way too long of a broadcast.
Oh yeah. Sorry, it was just getting to an interesting conversation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, very interesting. And if my voice wasn't starting to get weird and scratchy, I would say, But I think we need to wind this down.
Yeah. Close it off?
Yeah. So anyway, this has been really interesting. I hope this really, has some good effect on the election and the community itself. I hope we can keep doing these as the game goes on, because this.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah, because this is really cool. So, all right. Well, see you all at the election, and remember to vote Celestial, because this is a neutral broadcast. We can't advocate a particular party, so vote Celestial.
So vote Unity. Vote for the United Bloc. Vote for the United Front, the third alternative.
Yeah, I guess you can advocate your party here. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. At this point, we're ending. Vote Unity.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. Well, and we'll end it here. Thanks, everyone.